What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Omni-sensei here with What If I Was Reborn in Naruto as an UCHIHA and SUKUNA'S Jinchuriki? Part 3. If you enjoy this type of content, please continuously dimension / the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Remember to check out the original story linked in the description. Let's get into the rise of the strongest Uchiha in history without further ado. Normally, a ninja's prime falls between the ages of 20 and 40. Few exceptional individuals manage to extend this peak. Jiraiya was chosen as a disciple by Hiruzen Sarutobi in his youth due to his vast chakra reserves. His training on Mount Myaboku transformed him from a struggling underdog into an equal to Orochimaru. Among the Sannin, Jiraiya's combat style was the most versatile, mirroring his sensei's. He was adept at handling nearly any situation. The title of Legendary Sannin was initially a term of derision. It was the later contributions of Jiraiya and Orochimaru during the war that elevated it to legendary status. Jiraiya had pushed himself to the limits of what an ordinary human could achieve. But today, he faced monsters. The fierce battle raged on. The vast forest at the border of the land of hot springs was reduced to scorched earth. The half-tailed beast form of Blue Bee unleashed an immense, compressed ball of yin and yang chakra in an 8-to-2 ratio. Boom! The pressure alone caused the ground to crack and sink underfoot. Behind him, A and B stood side by side, their clothes tattered. B, you need to eat more meat and grow stronger, A teased. If you could match my power with your lightning-style double lariat, that guy would be toast. Got it, bro. Yo. Let's go. Jiraiya, I can't stop that thing, Gamabunta muttered, his breath heavy as he gripped his short blade. Regular tailed beast attacks were one thing, but tailed beast balls? Gamabunta had no answer for that. You can head back, Gamabunta, Jiraiya said. If there's still time, reverse summon me to Mount Myaboku. What? You think? Poof. Before Gamabunta could finish, Jiraiya unsummoned him. He couldn't bear to use his companion as a shield. Earth-style multiple earth walls. Layer upon layer of thick earth walls rose from the ground, forming a barrier. Needle Jizo. Jiraiya's white hair extended and enveloped him in a protective cocoon, leaving only one eye exposed. Can this hold? He thought grimly. If only Orochimaru were here, his triple Rashomon might stand a chance. Hum. The massive-tailed beast ball tore through the air, obliterating everything in its path. The ground ruptured and burned as it traveled, leaving deep scars across the battlefield. The earth walls crumbled like paper, offering no resistance. The devastating attack barreled toward Jiraiya with unstoppable force. Am I late, Jiraiya-sensei? A warm chakra presence, radiating like sunlight, enveloped the battlefield. Jiraiya peeked out from his protective hair cocoon. Minato. Kagami. Wait, is that? The red-haired woman, cloaked in a fiery chakra aura, smirked. Let me deal with this first, and then we'll talk. In an instant, a crimson chakra shroud enveloped her, and a black sphere began to condense in front of her. Jiraiya's eyes widened in disbelief. Kushina, she's using the Nine-Tails chakra. The atmosphere froze as two massive forces collided head-on. Boom! The resulting explosion was blinding, brighter than the sun. A shockwave radiated outward, tearing through the ground and creating fissures as if a colossal hammer had struck the earth. The sheer force of the clash sent debris flying and obscured the battlefield with a dense cloud of smoke and dust. As the dust settled, Jiraiya retracted his hair defenses. You look awful, you pervert, a voice teased. The young, dark-haired Kagami turned, his crimson Sharingan eyes glinting with faint amusement. It's just a tailed beast. No big deal. Ha, Jiraiya chuckled, relieved. Show some respect for your teacher, kid. It's the Crimson Eye of the Leaf. The nickname and description of Kagami had spread across the underworld and among enemy villages. Who's the woman? A asked, puzzled. Wasn't the Leaf's Jinchuriki supposed to be Kagami? A's mind wasn't suited for analysis, and the situation left him more confused than ever. Then Jiraiya noticed an older ninja who had gone largely unnoticed. Kosuke. You're here too. Yes, Jiraiya-sama. Kosuke Mariboshi replied humbly. But please don't call me that. More Cloud Ninja arrived, creating a tense standoff between the two forces. Red hair, but the intel said the Jinchuriki was an Uchiha, murmured one of the Cloud Ninjas. Wait, that's... The Crimson Eye, Kagami Uchiha. Kagami's expression darkened with irritation. Which idiot came up with that nickname? So embarrassing. His sharp gaze landed on the younger ninja with sunglasses, B, and the larger man beside him. Their distinct features made them easy to recognize. That must be A and B, the future Eight Tails Jinchuriki. If Kagami's memory served, Orochimaru's schemes led to the Eight Tails being extracted from Blue B, paving the way for B to become its next host. Blue B was likely still a novice Jinchuriki, unlike the well-integrated Killer B of the future. Whether the Nine Tails Jinchuriki was Kushina or Kagami didn't matter. The presence of a Nine Tails Jinchuriki on the battlefield was tantamount to declaring war. The Cloud wasn't ready for a full-scale confrontation. Their original intent was to test the Eight Tails' power, and perhaps score some minor victories. TCH. It's the Cloud. Kushina's disgust was palpable. Years ago, the Cloud had attempted to kidnap her, a memory that still filled her with rage. Jiraiya-sensei, Minato said quietly, are you still able to fight? Jiraiya sensed the pull from Mount Mayaboku. He disconnected the link and grinned. Of course I can fight. It's time to show Kagami what a teacher can really do. Don't worry, Kagami quipped. I already got a sense of your prowess after that incident with the women's bath. As Kagami drew his short sword, Shirayuki, he strode calmly toward the Cloud forces. There was no hesitation, no fear in his steps. Facing the half-tailed beast form of Blue Bee, Kagami showed only indifference. If it were the fully synchronized Killer Bee, he might reconsider. But against Blue Bee? A fledgling Jinchuriki? Kagami found it laughable. You little punk. A bellowed, stepping forward. You're way too arrogant. Kagami didn't stop, each step measured and precise, as if strolling through the park. His crimson Sharingan eyes burned coldly. Get out of my way. A storm of slashes erupted, raining down like a relentless torrent. Fear. What is fear? Fear is one of humanity's primal emotional responses, born from the need to survive in ancient times. When faced with the unknown, threats from wild animals, or natural disasters, humanity's ancestors developed an instinctual reaction: fear. Fear served as a powerful tool of self-preservation, pushing individuals to avoid danger and protect themselves. To A, what he faced now wasn't just a slender boy. It was hell itself, veiled in ash and blood. It was a pair of crimson eyes that filled the entire world. It was a barrage of relentless blades, slicing him piece by piece. His instincts screamed at him to flee, to run as far as possible from this overwhelming terror. Boom! A crackling blue lightning shield erupted around A, deflecting the endless flurry of slashes. You little brat. Do you know who I am? I am the future Raikage. A. Encasing his body in lightning chakra mode. Jiraiya muttered, his pupils shrinking. He didn't use this earlier. Did he underestimate me? In truth, Jiraiya was mistaken. It wasn't deliberately holding back. He simply wasn't yet adept at maintaining the lightning chakra mode in cooperative battles. But now, anger fueled him. His fear of Kagami enraged him, forcing his body to push through its limits. For humans, the correct response to fear is often to flee. But sometimes, facing it head-on leads to breakthroughs. A's speed increased dramatically, blinding, like a bolt of lightning. Boom! Shockwaves rippled outward as the two clashed, resembling the impact of a cannonball striking an iron wall. Stop your shouting, Kagami said coldly, his tone flat. All it does is reveal your weakness. A, standing at over 2 meters tall, with fists larger than most heads, had his punch caught mid-swing by Kagami's slender hand. Though Kagami's physical strength was not his forte, his resilience had been forged in countless battles. 2 instances of black flash had left his body strained, but that didn't mean he was fragile. How is this possible? Your strength. I couldn't believe it. How could this young brat withstand the physical force he had honed through years of relentless training? Kagami smirked faintly. What's so hard to believe? The only ones who can surpass the Uchiha in physical prowess are the Senju and Uzumaki clans. Who do you think you are? While they had trained tirelessly, Kagami had faced challenges that dwarfed such efforts. With threats both external and internal, Kagami fought against the tide of fate itself. The pressure he bore far exceeded that of anyone around him. He had pushed his body to its limits more times than he could count, gasping for breath, hearing phantom sounds in his ears. Yet, he never stopped until he wrung every last ounce of strength from himself. Kagami never questioned whether he could change the Uchiha's destiny. Failure was not an option. If he were to fail, it would only be in death. Next, I'll punch with my right hand, Kagami stated calmly. The target is your left chest. Stiffened as Kagami retracted his hand. The sudden motion disrupted his balance. Black lightning crackled and coiled around Kagami's fist. Get out of the way! Shouted Dodai, desperately forming a rubber shield in front of a roar. Half-tailed Beast Blue'Bee charged forward, knowing the proximity between A and Kagami made ranged attacks impossible. But Kagami had learned to control his Black Flash after 2 uses. Not every instance of Black Flash required the same level of force he'd used to counter Dust Release. He adjusted the intensity to avoid damaging himself unnecessarily. At the precise moment, within a margin of error less than 0.000001 seconds, he unleashed it. Black Flash. Crack. The black lightning shattered the rubber shield layer by layer, landing squarely on A's left chest. Boom. The impact echoed like a cannonball striking a fortress. A's massive body was hurled backward, crashing through several boulders before finally coming to a halt. Big bro. A. Roar. Blue'Bee unleashed a barrage of energy blasts from his mouth. As the projectiles rained down, he barked out orders. A is still alive. Retreat now while I cover you. B. Go. The energy blasts were like mass-produced missiles, but they lacked the destructive power of a tailed beast bomb. Kagami effortlessly sliced through them with a bright gleam of his blade, Shirayuki. He leaped high into the air, directly toward Blue'Bee. From the beginning, his target had been the 8 tails. Jiraiya and the others weren't idle as stray energy blasts hurtled toward them. What kind of monstrous battle is this? Murmured Kosuke Mariboshi. Despite his extensive experience, even he felt like a mere spectator here. Their combined water and earth release techniques neutralized the incoming attacks, ensuring they wouldn't be caught in the crossfire. This doesn't feel like our fight at all. Kosuke muttered. Kushina observed the unfolding battle with mild confusion. Kagami is fighting a Jinchuriki. Why don't you two seem worried? Jiraiya sat down, catching his breath. I've taught that kid for over a year. It's strange, really. My students keep getting more and more outrageous. Oh, sorry, Minato, you're here too. Minato chuckled and shook his head, indicating he wasn't offended. Jiraiya continued, the Uchiha. Their bloodline is extraordinary. I was a little concerned about that lightning-clad guy earlier, but against a Jinchuriki? Kagami will be fine. He turned to Kushina with a knowing smile. That kid's eye power is so strong, even the Nine-Tails fears him. Inside Kushina's mind, the Nine-Tails roared furiously from its restraints. I've told you countless times. That brat is Madara's reincarnation. Kill him. Kill him now. The beast's violent chakra surged, attempting to influence Kushina. Minato immediately placed his hand on her stomach, reinforcing the seal. Thankfully, the leakage was minimal, and he quickly stabilized the situation. Kushina, are you all right? Panting heavily, she forced a smile, looking up at his worried face. I'm fine. The Nine-Tails is just spouting nonsense about reincarnation. It doesn't even make sense. In the sealed space, the Nine-Tails, bound by massive stakes and chains, snarled. You fools know nothing. Kill him now. If he continues to grow. Stupid Kushina. Let me out, and I'll kill him myself. Kushina's spirit appeared within the seal, her brow furrowed. Can you stop yelling? I'm not afraid of you. Sure, you surprised me just now, but you're still locked up. Don't think I'll fall for your tricks. The Nine-Tails struggled to suppress its frustration. As terrifying as being sealed was, The thought of being controlled by Madara again was even worse. For the first time, the beast's voice carried no malice, only dread. Madara Uchiha. The one who forced me to fight Hashirama Senju. You can't fathom how terrifying he is. I'm certain that kid is his reincarnation. Or worse. Madara isn't dead. He's been reborn through that boy. Kill him while you still can. Do it before it's too late. Chains began coiling tighter around the Nine Tails. What nonsense, Kushina muttered. That's Minato's little brother in training. Just a brat. Now shut up. As more chains tightened, nearly covering the beast's head, it panicked. You fool. You'll regret this, Kushina. Turning away, Kushina glanced back coldly. Don't try to manipulate me, Nine Tails. Whatever happens, I'll never regret my choices. The chakra of the Eight Tails was immensely violent. In his half-tailed beast transformation, Blue Bee's every strike was like a catastrophic landslide. Kagami's figure darted through the chaotic energy like a butterfly dancing among flowers. You possess immense chakra, yet you cannot wield it properly. Abandoning the ways of a ninja to take on this monstrous form only makes you clumsier. Your speed is insufficient. Your reactions are dull. Someone like you. Do you deserve to live as a ninja? Kagami's words were like gleaming knives, stabbing deeply into Blue Bee's psyche. The words, combined with the corrosive influence of the tailed beast's chakra, drove him further into a frenzy. His rationality crumbled as anger consumed him. Roar! Terrifying chakra surged outward from Blue Bee, creating a tidal wave of destruction. Gale force winds raged, ripping through the landscape. Kagami gripped his blade, slicing through the storm with invisible slashes, carving a path through the chaos. His voice, like a demon's whisper, pierced through the roaring winds, landing clearly in Blue Bee's ears. You were chosen as a Jinchuriki because you were exceptional, offering yourself for your village's sake. For making such a sacrifice, what have you received in return? Cold stares. Rejection. Isolation. You were supposed to be a hero, yet they treat you as a disaster waiting to happen. From the start, Blue Bee avoided direct eye contact with Kagami's Sharingan. The legend of the Uchiha's eyes was well known. Meeting them was a death sentence in a one-on-one battle. But Genjutsu didn't solely rely on visual cues. It could be triggered through touch, sound, or even smell. Kagami leveraged his voice to cast a subtle Genjutsu, infiltrating Blue Bee's fractured mind and preying on his vulnerabilities. This technique required extreme precision, along with the Sharingan's unparalleled insight. A more stable ninja would have sensed and disrupted the Genjutsu. But Blue Bee, mentally exhausted and emotionally strained from the burden of being a Jinchuriki, was an easy target. Shut up. Shut up. A guttural roar erupted from Blue Bee's distorted mouth, his mind teetering on the brink of collapse. Kagami smirked internally. When your enemy protests, it's proof you're hitting the mark. He pressed on, his voice a venomous whisper brushing against Blue Bee's fraying nerves. If the hidden cloud viewed you as a comrade, would they have abandoned you to fight alone? You know deep down they see you as nothing more than a weapon. Isn't the purpose of this mission to test the Eight Tails' power? More of the tailed beast's chakra leaked out, forming skeletal white bones over Blue Bee's crimson cloak, a precursor to a full rampage. When a tailed beast broke free, it often meant the Jinchuriki's death. A black seal inscribed with the word iron glowed faintly on Blue Bee's chest. It was the iron armor seal, a technique used by the hidden cloud to bind the Eight Tails. The markings bore similarities to the Uzumaki clan's sealing arts. No surprise, the Uzumaki clan had been annihilated by multiple nations for their advanced sealing techniques. After all, the first Hokage had gifted tailed beasts to other villages without providing the necessary tools to control them. Gyuki, can you hear me? Kagami called out to the Eight Tails. Even if you break free now, the hidden cloud will seal you again. Why not embrace your fate? Together with Blue Bee, find liberation in death. He will find peace, and you can be reborn. The skeletal armor paused, hesitating mid-formation. Who are you? And how do you know my name? For centuries, Gyuki had never revealed his true name. He had long since lost trust in humanity after countless betrayals and battles. I am Kagami Uchiha. My ancestors are the sons of the Sage of Six Paths, Indra himself. These Sharingan are proof of our lineage. Our family's stone tablet records your name and your brethren. Our ancestors regarded you as brothers. Kagami spun a convincing lie without hesitation. I see. I recognize those eyes. Gyuki had no direct animosity toward the Sharingan, unlike Kurama. His memories of Indra's eyes remained neutral. But I won't trust humans anymore, even if you're Indra's descendant. Boom. A skeletal arm formed from chakra swiped Kagami away, sending him hurtling through the air. Kagami smirked faintly, even as he tumbled. His palm had touched Blue Bee's back moments earlier, placing a sealing formula atop the iron armor seal. He never intended to persuade Gyuki. All he needed was time to adjust the seal, keeping both Blue Bee and the Eight Tails trapped at a critical threshold. Slash. Invisible slashes severed a chakra tail that had begun forming into a tentacle. You insolent brat! Gyuki roared. But Kagami paid no mind to the beast's fury. His Sharingan spun, the crimson hue growing darker as the Tomo whirled violently. 8. A pure, lethal slash meant to sever both body and soul. Harnessing the power of his Sharingan, Kagami unleashed Hyujin Sekka, a deadly technique capable of cleaving through spiritual energy. Where Sukuna needed a physical medium to invoke 8 on living beings, Kagami's chakra made it possible to bridge the gap. The Sage of Six Paths had intended chakra to connect people's hearts. In truth, it had become the ultimate weapon. Kagami extended his hand, palm open, as if throwing something invisible. Thump. A heartbeat. Screech, a piercing, otherworldly sound shattered the air. The slash cut through space itself, leaving an eerie stillness in its wake. Slashing art, severing worlds, a pure, unparalleled strike. Reality seemed to split as the attack cleaved through the half-transformed Gyuki. A jagged, precise crack ran between the horns of the Eight Tails. A deep, bottomless trench split the earth as Blue Bee, still wrapped in his tailed beast cloak, was sliced cleanly in half. When a tailed beast is extracted, the Jinchuriki dies. Likewise, when the tailed beast remains sealed and the Jinchuriki dies, the tailed beast dies as well. The crimson chakra that once surged like a storm now dripped slowly, resembling thick blood. Standing beside Blue Bee's bisected body, Kagami Uchiha looked like a bloodthirsty demon. Blue Bee's body still contained a vast amount of tailed beast chakra. Kagami made no effort to hide as he began absorbing it. His ability to siphon tailed beast chakra had already been revealed during the battle against the Four Tails. There was no need to keep it secret anymore. If anyone questioned it, he could just attribute it to his Sharingan. After all, they didn't have one. You really killed the Jinchuriki just like that? The rest of the group arrived, their expressions a mix of disbelief and shock. The battle had been surprisingly brief. Kagami hadn't even seemed to use any major jutsu. They had only caught snippets of his words and the occasional movement. And then, suddenly, one decisive strike had ended it all. Not even their revered teacher, Hiruzen Sarutobi, could achieve something so devastatingly efficient. Kagami offered no explanation. This fight had not been a showcase of overwhelming power. From start to finish, he had exploited psychological weaknesses and struck at the cracks in Blue Bee's mind. When words alone could dismantle an enemy, Kagami had no qualms about playing the talkative strategist. Looking at the lifeless body, Jiraiya sighed deeply, more troubled by the broader implications. Kagami, you were too impulsive. If we had worked together, we might have captured the Jinchuriki alive. Now that he's dead, the hidden cloud will never let this go. Sensei, you're wrong, Minato interjected firmly. His gaze was steady, his voice unwavering. It was the hidden cloud who killed our comrades first. If anyone refuses to let this go, it should be us. His eyes briefly flicked to the edges of the battlefield, where the broken bodies of Leaf Shinobi lay in disarray. The earlier reports had already confirmed that the hidden cloud had initiated the invasion. I know. Jiraiya's voice was heavy with bitterness. I know. I just hate this endless cycle of war. If there's peace at the end of this war, Minato replied, smiling faintly, then I will fight until the very end. As Kagami absorbed the Eight Tails chakra, Minato cautiously approached. How are you holding up? Kagami didn't answer immediately. He glanced inward at the sealing space within himself. On one side of the sealed domain lay Sukuna, securely locked away. On the other, the extracted chakra from the tailed beasts was neatly stored. 3 units of Nine Tails chakra rested in a corner, alongside dozens of units from the 4 tails. The newly acquired 8 Tails chakra, nearly 200 units, dwarfed the rest. It was a significant boost to his resources. The 8 Tails chakra, predominantly water-aligned with unique properties, was a goldmine for study. The tailed beasts, in essence, were products of yin-yang release. Each new addition to Kagami's collection expanded his understanding of yin-yang techniques. If his comprehension grew deep enough, he entertained the notion of achieving eternal Mangekyo Sharingan abilities through chakra manipulation alone. Kagami lacked Orochimaru's biological research capabilities. He couldn't grow an 8 Tails horn from a single skin cell, but he didn't need to. With the Sharingan's insight into chakra, Kagami could delve deeper than cellular analysis, down to the metaphysical core, akin to manipulating molecules rather than just cells. Orochimaru could only lament his lack of Sharingan as Kagami smirked internally. Smoothing his thoughts, Kagami turned back to the group. I already told you, it's just a tailed beast. Only someone like Jiraiya-sensei would have trouble with it. Bonk. Caught off guard, Kagami felt a heavy fist slam into his head. Who could strike so fast and so hard? Ah, it was Kushina. What was that for? Kagami snarled, clutching his head. Her punch was heavier than even the Raikage's hits. Kushina stood with her fists clenched, her fiery red hair swaying like tails. I worked hard to suppress the 9 Tails chakra. Are you saying I'm no better than this pervy old man? Jiraiya wisely chose silence at this moment. Kagami evaluated the situation. If it came to a fight, Kushina's raw strength might give her the edge. And if Minato joined her? Definitely a lost cause. Kagami had always maintained a sharp distinction between how he treated strangers and his clan. To outsiders, he was cold and unapproachable. But to his clan, he was the picture of charm and filial devotion. Even as a child, when Obito accused Kagami of bullying him, no one believed it. So now, Kagami softened his expression into a warm, disarming smile. 9 Tails is in a league of its own, far stronger than the sum of all other tailed beasts combined. When I said it was just a tailed beast, of course, I wasn't including the 9 Tails. You misunderstood. The difference between Kagami and the future Sasuke was that Kagami knew when to yield and when to stand firm. Kushina's fist lowered. See? I knew you weren't that bad of a kid, she said, her tone playful as she ruffled his hair. Call me Big Sis Kushina. Stop messing with my hair. Kagami growled, swatting her hand away. Oh come on, what's the big deal about a little pat? Minato intervened, gently pulling Kushina back. If Kagami doesn't like it, you should stop. You wouldn't want people calling you by silly nicknames, right? That seemed to strike a chord. Kushina relented, leaning casually against Kagami's shoulder. Fine, fine, don't be mad. I'll treat you to barbecue back in the village. I'm rich, you know. Kagami scoffed. I own an entire street in the UCHIHA district. Well, I own a street in the commercial district. Nearby, Jiraiya nudged Minato, whispering conspiratorially. So Minato, how far have you and Kushina gone? Sensei. Minato sighed, exasperated. You know how much travel and research costs, right? Kosuke Maraboshi observed quietly, a faint smile on his lips. He saw promise in these young shinobi. Even Kagami, despite his ruthless demeanor toward enemies, clearly cared for his comrades. The 4 had spent weeks together, and the team's dynamic was beginning to solidify. Watching them, Kosuke was reminded of the 3 legendary Sannin in their prime. Kagami, meanwhile, had moved aside, pulling out a bento box to eat alone. The others had long since stopped questioning his solitary habits. At first, Kushina thought Kagami simply disliked Maraboshi's cooking. That was until she saw what Kagami ate. His meals were nothing more than a concoction of herbs and medicines, far less appetizing than even ration pills. Minato and Jiraiya had always known about Kagami's dietary regime. His immense power was no mystery to them. What they couldn't understand was why Kagami craved strength so desperately. Boom! The stone table shattered into dust, and the violent surge of chakra cracked the walls of the office. The 3rd Raikage clenched his fist tightly, exuding a killing intent so intense it felt suffocating. His furious gaze landed on A, whose chest was wrapped in heavy bandages. Useless fool. You abandoned your comrade and still dare return alive. How do you have the nerve to stand here? Hung his head, tears streaming down his face as guilt and self-blame consumed him. If not for his recklessness, challenging the red-eyed Uchiha alone, he wouldn't have been defeated and rendered unconscious. And Blueby wouldn't have had to sacrifice himself to cover their retreat. Reikage-sama. It was my decision. I'll bear all responsibility for this failure. It's me who deserves to die. With a thud, Dodai dropped to his knees, tears falling freely. In the meeting room, the young killer bee stood silently, his small frame seeming even smaller. His dark sunglasses concealed his expression, but the sorrow in his heart was no less than anyone else's. Blueby had been his mentor, a figure he deeply respected and admired. "Dodai-sensei, you chose to retreat because of me," he croaked, his voice hoarse and broken. He knelt as well, bowing his head low. "Reikage-sama, I will not take the coward's way out. Please grant me the honor of dying in battle." The third Reikage stared deeply at his son. The rage boiling within him wasn't feigned. If he had followed Dodai's example and begged for death, the Reikage wouldn't have hesitated to kill him on the spot. Grabbing him by the collar, the Reikage hoisted him into the air. "Carry this shame and live with it. Only the blood of our enemies can cleanse your disgrace. Konohagakure is too strong." The third Reikage stood in silence for a long moment, staring out the window. "Dodai, I'm leaving the village in your hands. I need to have a proper conversation with that old fossil, Inoki. Between nations, there were no eternal allies or foes, only eternal interests." Even the fourth Reikage later partnered with Inoki to oppose Uchiha Madara, despite the death of his father. The third Reikage was no less pragmatic. According to Dodai's report, Konoha's Nine-Tails Jinchuriki had already entered the battlefield, alongside a young shinobi who could use the Flying Thunder God technique. The three legendary Sannin were in their prime, and Hiruzen Sarutobi's reputation as the professor remained untarnished. And then there was the Uchiha Kagami. Could this boy truly grow to rival the legendary Senju Hashirama? They couldn't afford to wait and find out. In the minds of the third Reikage and Inoki, Uchiha Madara and Hashirama were unparalleled shinobi, whose battles had forced an end to the Warring States period and led to the establishment of the village system. Another Uchiha of that caliber must never rise again, especially not in Konoha. Boom. In a dimly lit underground chamber, Danzo Shimura slammed his fist onto a desk. "Fools. Arrogant fools. I worked so hard to sow discord between the Hidden Cloud and Hidden Stone, allowing Konoha to watch from the sidelines. They could have defeated the Eight Tails without killing him. Why escalate things now? We could have waited until they were bleeding each other dry before striking. But no. Now they've dragged us into a full-scale war. Jiraiya. Namake's Minato. Uchiha Kagami. Idiots, all of them." The storm of war swept across the lands. The Hidden Cloud and Hidden Stone, previously locked in bitter conflict, suddenly shifted their focus and simultaneously invaded the borders of the Land of Fire. The Third Shinobi World War had officially begun. On the Western Front, Orochimaru was forced to withdraw from the Wind Country to bolster the defenses against the Hidden Stone. Taking advantage of Konoha's divided attention, the Land of Wind, under its newly instated 4th Kazekage Raza, declared war on Konoha as well. This war escalated faster than in the original timeline. Kagami Uchiha's existence was no longer a butterfly merely fluttering its wings. He was a gale capable of turning the tides of history. With Konoha facing enemies on 3 fronts, it suffered significant losses early on, with numerous border outposts overrun. More and more shinobi were deployed to the front lines, and the academy graduation age was reduced to 9. The newly formed Namake's Minato squad was split up. As skilled as he was, Minato was not an inexhaustible machine. He couldn't possibly cover all battlefronts while managing a team that included Kushina and Kagami. The strain would have killed him. Based on their respective strengths, Minato and Kushina were sent to the Western Front to assist Orochimaru against the Hidden Sand and Hidden Stone. There, they encountered the 4 Tails and 5 Tails Jinchuriki. It was a one-sided massacre. Were it not for the overwhelming numbers of the Hidden Stone forces, the 2 Jinchuriki would have been destroyed on the spot. Meanwhile, on the Sand Front, Minato solidified his reputation as the Yellow Flash of Konoha, achieving the incredible feat of eliminating 7 high-ranking puppet masters in one battle. The Hidden Sand's once proud puppet corps faced the threat of total extinction. On the Eastern Front, although the Hidden Mist had yet to join the war, Konoha could not afford to let its guard down. The previous Mizukage had infamously traveled great distances to perish alongside the Tsuchikage, demonstrating the mist's penchant for unpredictability. Even the cloud and stone watched the mist warily. As commander of the Eastern Front, Shikaku Nara stared at the group of Uchiha shinobi under his command, his expression unreadable. He was chosen for his intelligence, as this front was considered less critical than the others. But still, he had no experience leading the Uchiha clan. And to make matters worse, there was also a contingent of Hyuga shinobi stationed here. Why were the two most troublesome bloodline clans both assigned to him? The sudden escalation forced Hiruzen Sarutobi to deploy the majority of the Uchiha clan. Assigning them to the Eastern Front was a calculated move to limit their influence, as water-style techniques and the hidden mists tactics posed significant challenges to the Uchiha's capabilities. With Fugaku remaining on the Western Front, the leader of the Eastern Uchiha contingent was Jinhi. These Uchiha were of a specific faction, loyal to Kagami. "Shikaku, Kagami instructed us to follow your commands fully during wartime," Jinhi said calmly. He glanced at the nearby Hyuga clan members, sneering. "Unlike these pampered nobles, we Uchiha can handle orders. Don't hesitate." On the northern front, atop a high cliff, Jiraiya crouched with binoculars, scanning the landscape. His focus lingered on a small waterfall, where he fantasized about spotting women bathing. "Keep it up, and I'll cut that thing off," Kagami said flatly. Jiraiya scowled. "It's all your fault. If not for your antics, I might have gotten some time to relax. Now the old man has me stationed on the front lines, waiting for the Raikage's inevitable attack." Cloud skirmishes had already erupted along the border. Hiruzen Sarutobi had explicitly ordered Jiraiya and Kagami to remain at the center, prepared to counter the third Raikage strike. Should the Raikage appear, Konoha was to be notified immediately. Hiruzen himself would engage. The professor had yet to show signs of decline. For Kagami's controversial slaying of the Eight-Tails Jinchuriki, Hiruzen issued no rebuke. Instead, it was classified as retaliation against Cloud's initial aggression and credited as an S-rank mission. Kagami could now select a technique from the Scroll of Seals as his reward. As Sunagakure declared war, Hiruzen issued an official proclamation. Konoha now stood against the lands of wind, earth, and lightning. History would remember this moment as the true beginning of the Third Shinobi World War. Uchiha Kagami sat cross-legged, his thoughts focused on researching Tailed Beast Chakra. Suddenly, Jiraiya tossed something his way. Raising his hand, Kagami caught it, a scroll. "What's this?" Without looking back, Jiraiya replied in a calm tone. "You and Minato have been working on adding nature transformation to the Rasengan, right? This is something I and the old man worked on. We didn't manage to perfect it, but it's a prototype. Minato has already signed the contract with Mount Mayaboku. They only accept one summoner per generation. I've taught you most of what I know. I don't have much else to give." Jiraiya turned around with a goofy grin. "Consider this an early birthday gift. Happy 10th birthday, Kagami." The year was Konoha year 47. The fierce battles had raged for over a year. War, like a monstrous beast, ravaged the ninja world with its claws of death and destruction. Rivers of blood flowed wherever it went. Shinobi wars, though fought with tools other than modern weaponry, caused no fewer casualties. Small nations located at the borders of the great countries became blood-soaked battlegrounds. In every shinobi war, it was these nations, caught in the cracks of great powers, that suffered the most. Ninja didn't dwell on the nature of war. They fought to protect their homes. The will of fire left by the first Hokage, though vague, inspired generation after generation of shinobi to sacrifice themselves for Konoha. The ninja world was far from normal. To survive, one had to adapt to its chaos. In the forest, Uchiha Obito was unusually excited. "Kakashi, do you think we'll see Kagami this time? That guy's been stealing the spotlight on the battlefield. Humph, once I awaken my Sharingan, even Kagami will bow before Obito-sama." After countless low-level missions, they were finally headed to the front lines, albeit on a supply delivery mission. Obito was already fantasizing about cutting down enemies and making Uchiha Kagami acknowledge him. And then, Rin. He. Kakashi, holding a book wrapped in a black cover, glanced at him. "Little Obito, you should call me sensei. I'm your leading jonin, after all." At only 11 years old, Kakashi had become a jonin, a year earlier than in the original timeline. Under the occasional rough guidance of Kagami Uchiha at the academy and the dedicated mentorship of Jiraiya, his talents had flourished. Jiraiya often remarked with amazement how, despite being a failure in his youth, his disciples grew into unparalleled prodigies. Even with his rapid progress, Kakashi was still outshined by Uchiha Kagami, who had achieved the rank of Jonin 2 months earlier through pure battle merit. However, nobody in Konoha dared to compare Kakashi to Kagami. The young prodigy stood alongside the Yellow Flash and Nine-Tails Jinchuriki as part of Konoha's new generation of legends. All three were undefeated since their rise, with the Yellow Flash boasting the most prominent achievement, defeating Kazekage Raza. "You're nothing special, Kakashi. Wait until I awaken. Awaken first, then talk," Kakashi interrupted, closing his book. "You've become the shame of the Uchiha clan. Still no Sharingan as a ninja? Maybe it's just not meant for you." "You." Obito was about to retort when Kakashi's expression changed abruptly. He pushed Obito aside. Shhkk. A kunai struck the spot where Obito had been standing, a tag wrapped around its hilt. "Scatter," Kakashi ordered. Boom. Amid the clearing smoke, 5 or 6 Cloud Nin appeared, their headbands glinting in the sunlight. Silver hair, short blade. "Hey, I've got your info, Hatake Kakashi, son of the White Fang, disciple of Jiraiya, and comrade to the Yellow Flash and Crimson Eye." A flash of light. Kakashi's blade moved faster than the eye could follow, piercing through the heart of the speaker in an instant. "Too many titles. Just call me Hatake Kakashi. Azuru. You bastard. You dared to kill Azuru. Damn Konoha scum." Kakashi stepped back, deflecting an oncoming attack. His calm, dead-fish eyes betrayed no emotion. "It's always you Cloud Nin making the first move. Then you cry foul when we retaliate. Is whining some kind of tradition in your village? Damn brat. How dare you insult us? I'll show you the strength of a Cloud Nin's rage." Kakashi sighed, shaking his head. Spending time with Kagami had given him a thicker skin against verbal abuse, and a knack for using it himself. Insults and rage. Your vocabulary is really limited. Did you learn nothing but pillaging? Maybe start over for monkeys and try evolving again. Right now, you barely qualify as humans. Lowering his voice, he turned to his teammates. "Obito, Rin, send the distress signal and stay close to me." "Got it." Though young, Obito and Rin had experienced bandit skirmishes before and weren't paralyzed by fear at the sight of blood. Kakashi prepared to strike again when a giant shuriken landed beside him. When did? Sensing danger, he disappeared in a flash of blue lightning. Boom. A massive shuriken materialized where he had been standing, embedding itself deeply into the ground. "To dodge my magnet release, swift dual blades." Impressive. You truly are Crimson Eye's disciple. Disciple? Wrong. I'm his junior. Kakashi broke into a cold sweat as the figure stepped into view. Purple hair, a yellow scarf, and a massive square-edged shuriken. Just as the Cloud Nin had dossiers on Konoha's elites, Konoha had files on theirs. Troy of the Cloud, a jonin and wielder of the magnet release Kekii Genkai. Elite among elites. Why was someone like him inside the Land of Fire? "We were just aiming to disrupt your supply line," Troy said coldly. "But catching a big fish like you, that's unexpected." He smirked. "Whether you're a disciple or junior doesn't matter. To Kagami Uchiha, you're important. And that makes you a perfect hostage." Kakashi gripped his blade tightly, laughing coldly. "Abandoning comrades is more your style, Cloud Nin." "I see." Thwack. 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 Troy bit down on a scroll, summoning 3 massive square-edged shuriken. "You're sharp, but those 2 kids of yours already touched my shuriken. They won't escape my magnet release." As Kakashi readied himself, a voice cut through the tension. "Obito. Rin. Stick close to me." Kakashi swung his blade, cutting through the first shuriken, but its shattered fragments nicked his arm. Damn it! The second shuriken came faster. Weakened by his injuries, Kakashi couldn't fully split it. Boom! The force sent him flying. As the third shuriken flew toward Obito and Rin, Obito gritted his teeth, trembling but resolute. "I'll protect Rin. No matter what." His chakra surged, his eyes burning with the promise of awakening, SHNK. A soft sound echoed as the shuriken shattered into pieces. From the forest came the sound of deliberate footsteps. A tall, slender figure emerged. No shouts or overwhelming aura. Yet the sight of him alone turned the Cloud Nine to stone, their first instinct not to fight or flee, but to freeze. Like prey under the paw of a lion. "I'll say this up front," the boy said, his voice icy. "Kakashi isn't important to me. Secondly," scarlet eyes swept over them, pressing down with invisible weight. "You may start running now." In the ninja world, there was an unspoken rule. If your squad encounters either the Crimson Eye or the Yellow Flash, retreating is permitted. As long as you return alive, no punishment will follow. Despite this, those who managed to escape encounters with either were few and far between. Among the rare survivors, a piece of advice emerged. If you pose a threat to Minato Namake's teammates, he might let you escape without pursuit. But against Uchiha Kagami, luck. Luck was the only factor. If Kagami was eating and you didn't disturb him, he was likely to let you go. Unfortunately for the Cloud Nine, they had provoked him, and at a time far removed from mealtime. "Run!" Troy screamed at the top of his lungs. Calm a moment ago, he was now consumed by panic. Even though the odds of survival were slim, should they just give up? Never underestimate the Cloud. Damn it! Among the squad, only Troy managed to muster the courage to flee. The others? Their bodies refused to move. Thud. Something hit the ground, followed by a rolling sound. Troy kept running, sprinting for his life. His heart pounded as adrenaline surged. But something felt wrong. Why can't I see anything? Why is my face against the ground? His rolling head came to a stop, staring at his own fleeing body. "Come back. Take me with you. Don't you realize you've lost your head?" Kagami lowered his hand, and several more heavy thuds echoed through the forest. He found decapitation cleaner than slicing bodies in half. Less messy. More elegant. These enemies didn't even warrant him naming an attack. Calling it out would cheapen the moment. Turning back, Kagami gazed at Kakashi. How weak. You can't protect anything, can you? Kakashi pried his blade free from the embedded shuriken, rolling his eyes. Do you think everyone's a monster like you? That guy was an elite jonin with a Kekii Genkai. This isn't the kind of opponent someone my age should be facing. Having witnessed the vast gap between himself and his senior, Kakashi had long abandoned dreams of rivalry. He didn't even aspire to match Kagami or Minato. For Kakashi, achieving greatness at his own level was enough. Is this kid already giving up? Kagami shifted his gaze to Rin. No worries, Kakashi. One day, when you taste the pain of helplessness, you'll hunger for strength once more. Thank you, Kagami-sama, for saving us. Rin's face was still flushed with fear, the encounter with death leaving her shaken. Despite their similar ages, she knew Kagami was leagues ahead of them. Thanks. Obito muttered, looking away. Not that I needed your help. I could have protected Rin myself. No, Kagami thought, amused. You couldn't. Why are you here? Kakashi asked. He knew their mission was delivering supplies to the Western Front, while Kagami was stationed at the Northern Line. Classified, Kagami replied flatly. Kakashi, Rin, leave us. I need to talk to Obito. Hey, don't leave me here. Kagami's definitely going to beat me up. Don't go. Don't think I'm scared of you. Obito's trembling betrayed him. Kagami said nothing, his Sharingan spinning to life. Obito froze mid-sentence, collapsing unconscious. Kagami placed a hand on his back, murmuring, I'm merely using you. A white, writhing mass emerged from Obito's body, shrieking as it seeped through his collar. Before the white Zetsu clone could finish, Sharingan patterns filled its eyes. An invisible connection bridged their minds. In a hidden underground chamber, the real white Zetsu clutched its head in pain, writhing under an assault it couldn't comprehend. What's wrong? Uchiha Madara opened his aged eyes, his expression sharpening as he noticed a Sharingan manifest in white Zetsu's gaze. The aged man remained calm. Don't resist, Madara said flatly. The Sharingan overtook Zetsu completely. Its voice turned calm, its expression neutral. How interesting, Madara said, smirking. Such power. Kagami, have you awakened the Mangekyo? Through the connection, Kagami replied, Madara-sama, so you are alive. There was no need for excess words. Both understood. Madara had clearly been watching Kagami from the shadows, and Kagami wouldn't waste time explaining how he deduced Madara's existence. Anyone with such eyes could have seen the hints etched into the Uchiha stone tablet. Don't harm Obito, Madara said. He is my chosen successor. Of course not, Kagami replied. Like you, I wouldn't harm my kin. Kin. Madara's tone turned contemplative, recalling the twilight of his departure, when not a single Uchiha had followed him. Kagami, what is it you seek? I wish to meet you, Kagami said. To confirm a few things. There's no need. I am close to death. This decrepit form is too shameful. Madara-sama, Kagami said, his voice edged with a smile. I wish to know, how far am I from legend? Madara chuckled hoarsely. You remind me of Azuna. But, you're far too arrogant. Boom. Madara unleashed a storm of malevolent chakra. A sea of corpses and blood drowned the mental plane, countless demonic wails echoing within. But Kagami's Sharingan glowed brighter. In the midst of the carnage, his will carved out a pillar of unshakable clarity. You've grown old, Madara-sama, Kagami said coldly. How can someone like you tolerate such a frail existence? What are you scheming? Madara responded plainly. Peace in the ninja world. Kagami, the longer you live, the more you understand the inevitabilities of reality. The victors define the losers, and their existence becomes interlinked. Love births hatred. Love and hate intertwined. This is war. This is reality. With your eyes, you cannot see the final secrets of the stone tablet. If you could, you wouldn't be asking me this. Tell me, what do you think of this ninja world? With your power, you're qualified to succeed me. Kagami paused briefly. Then, he laughed. Don't think living a few extra decades gives you the right to lecture me. There will always be a victor. Why shouldn't that victor be me? Why would I want to inherit your legacy? Uchiha. The ninja world's future. It's all mine to decide. Madara, this world belongs to me. Madara's voice faded, but the aura he left behind lingered. Though it wasn't Azuna, Madara now understood why Zetsu had compared Kagami to himself. An unyielding, absolute self-centeredness, an unwavering belief in one's own supremacy. Madara laughed, a rare deep sound echoing through the cavern. How long has it been since I laughed like this? This child from the clan he abandoned had turned out to be so interesting. Kagami, our goals may differ, but your will, I acknowledge it. Come to the land of grass. I'll let you witness the true power of the Uchiha clan. Madara's voice turned mocking, taunting. Someone as competitive as you, will it break your heart to lose? The connection through Zetsu's Sharingan dissolved, but Kagami's resolve remained undeterred. I have no need for empathy toward the defeated. I will always be the victor. Inside Kagami's mental space, the King of Curses stirred. This time, Sukuna wasn't mocking or roaring with laughter. Instead, he studied the recent exchange with uncharacteristic seriousness. This world still harbors beings like him. Without Sukuna's cursed energy, Kagami knew he wouldn't have stood a chance against Madara's overwhelming ocular power. Even in his weakened state, without his Rinnegan, Uchiha Madara was a living legend, a god among men. You're seriously going to meet him now? Sukuna's voice echoed, neither mocking nor derisive. For once, the King of Curses wasn't eager for chaos. You're strong, but facing him? That's borderline idiotic. He's not just anyone, Kagami. Of course I'm going, Kagami replied coolly. He felt the strain of suppressing in his Sharingan's evolution. The moment to unleash it had to be perfect. It's not about recklessness. I have things I need to confirm. Sukuna's eyes narrowed. This world, the humans here are overflowing with energy. And you've grown so much in so little time. Too fast, even for you. He chuckled darkly, his forearms flexing as cursed energy surged around him. And me? I've grown stronger, too. You've given me that. This world. Truly fascinating. Then his tone shifted, becoming more sinister. I can feel it, that other force lurking in your spirit, the one you keep locked away. Why resist it? Embrace the madness, Kagami. Let it out. With you and me combined, we could annihilate this entire world. Do whatever we want. Kagami's voice was flat. You want me to lock you away for another year? Keep talking. Sukuna's lips curled into a snarl. Kagami. You need me. We're two sides of the same coin, whether you admit it or not. I need your power, Sukuna, Kagami admitted, pulling a significant amount of cursed energy into himself. But as he left the mental space, he threw one last remark over his shoulder. Remember your place. You're just a weapon. Within the skeletal confines of his prison, Sukuna's fury burned like an inferno. One day, he would teach Kagami the true meaning of terror. I am your curse, Sukuna growled, his eyes blazing. Why do you always use genjutsu on me the moment we meet? Obito's voice was shrill, filled with frustration. What the hell did you even do this time? Kagami didn't respond. Instead, he flicked Obito on the forehead, hard enough to stagger him. You should thank me. I'm strengthening your mental defenses. The surrounding barrier Kagami had set up dissipated, and Kakashi and Rin approached. You're leaving? Kakashi asked, noticing Kagami's movements toward the western border. He wanted to ask more but decided against it. A classified mission, he thought. For some reason, though, an unsettling feeling gnawed at Kakashi's chest. As Kagami disappeared into the distance, Kakashi's unease grew. Something about this departure felt final. Why does Kagami always pick on me? Obito grumbled, nursing a lump on his forehead. Maybe he sees potential in you, Kakashi replied, half joking. After all, he doesn't even bother with me or sensei. Obito rubbed his head thoughtfully. Potential, huh? Maybe you're right. But Rin's expression darkened. Unlike the others, she sensed it clearly. Kagami didn't see potential in Obito. Kagami's disdain for him wasn't hidden. If anything, it was painfully obvious. The war had entered a more prolonged phase. The initial chaos had given way to tactical maneuvers and calculated strategies. Kagami informed Jiraiya briefly before heading off on his own. Meeting Madara was only the first step. Once that encounter was over, he would proceed with perfecting his Mangekyo Sharingan, his ultimate goal. In Kagami's eyes, the eternal Mangekyo wasn't just another step. It was the pinnacle. The Rinnegan, despite its connection to the Uchiha's lineage, was irrelevant. The Sharingan was their true legacy, and Kagami would push it beyond its natural limits. Suppressing his emotions as he traveled, Kagami focused on maintaining control. He couldn't afford for his Sharingan to evolve prematurely. But the thought of meeting the legendary Uchiha Madara, of standing face-to-face with that historic figure, a maniacal grin spread across Kagami's face. He tried to suppress it, but it burst forth anyway, a laugh that echoed through the forest. Pure, unrestrained, maniacal laughter. The land of grass. Above the forested terrain, the piercing cry of a hawk echoed through the skies. Kagami slowly opened his eyes, the three tomo in his Sharingan spinning in unison. This was the resonance of ocular power. This was the pull of bloodline and destiny. Even separated by kilometers, two sets of Sharingan connected across the void. A surge of immense chakra swept across the air. As the younger Uchiha, it was only polite to announce his presence. Fire style, majestic flame destroyer. A sea of fire erupted, consuming the horizon and blotting out the sun. The deafening roar of the blaze tore through the sky, a tidal wave of flames stretching for kilometers. Then, the inferno shifted. Kagami's hands moved, his chakra molding the fire. One by one, massive dragon heads emerged from the sea of flames, their roars echoing through the skies as they prepared to descend. In the mountains below, Madara Uchiha gazed upward at the fiery spectacle. His lips curled into a faint smile as he brought his iconic gunbai to the front. Impressive fire-style jutsu, but it's meaningless against me. The flaming dragons hovered in place, seemingly waiting. The hawk carrying Kagami flew closer, its wings slicing through the hot air. The land below began to shift. Circular craters formed as massive chunks of earth were torn from the ground, as if an invisible force had dug them out. Earth-style, mudstone mausoleum, Kagami murmured. But unlike the standard technique, the enormous rocks did not fly toward the enemy. Instead, they were drawn into the flames above. With a deafening crack, the stones burst apart, merging into the fiery dragons. Madara's interest was piqued. Clever. Combining fire and earth elements to amplify the destructive power of the flames? From atop his hawk, Kagami let out a booming laugh. Madara-sama, I humbly ask for your judgment. Ninja Art, Meteoric Dragon Swarm. The sky shattered as fiery meteors rained down, each dragon-like projectile carrying the wrath of the heavens. Interesting, Madara muttered, still calm amidst the chaos. Standing in the heart of the inferno, his aged face displayed no fear. For a greeting, this is acceptable. With a single hand seal, Madara countered. Fire style, majestic flame annihilation. A torrent of fire roared forth, dwarfing Kageme's technique in sheer scale. The collision of the two flames obliterated the boulders infused in the dragons, reducing them to ash. The resulting inferno illuminated the battlefield, the heat distorting the air and charring the earth. From the blaze, Kagome emerged, his figure cutting through the inferno. In an instant, he was at Madara's side, his blade slashing through the air. Despite his age and weakened body, Madara's reflexes remained unparalleled. With a flick of his wrist, the chain of his scythe intercepted Kageme's blade. Madara's gaze fell to the sword in Kageme's hand. Maizoku, he murmured, recognizing the weapon. It seems you've inherited it. The blade had belonged to Izuna, Madara's beloved younger brother. Kageme's lips twisted into a feral grin. Don't grow too sentimental, or this sword might break under my strike. An invisible slash emanated from Kageme's blade, aimed directly at Madara's head, chest, and abdomen. Kagome wasn't holding back. Against a legend like Madara, restraint was not an option. A faint blue glow surrounded Madara as a skeletal layer of Susanoo armor materialized. An invisible technique, Madara noted. Your unique style. I'm aware of it. With a slight movement, the chain tightened, and the overwhelming force behind Madara's scythe nearly brought Kagome to his knees. What monstrous strength! Kagome thought, gritting his teeth. I may be old, but you're still too young, Madara said calmly. I've fought men who could shatter mountains with their bare hands, like Hashirama. Kagome pushed back with all his might, his muscles straining against the pressure. I have a question, Kagome said, his voice steady despite the struggle. Why did you believe that Hashirama would take his own life? What weapon could kill someone like him? Madara's eyes narrowed slightly. You've uncovered much, it seems. But that question is naive. Madara's voice softened, tinged with nostalgia. Someone like Hashirama. At that moment, if I hadn't stopped him, he would have done it. His resolve was absolute. Even after everything that happened, Madara never doubted Hashirama's commitment. Kagome tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. And do you regret it? If you had let him die, would things have been better? Regret. The battle paused momentarily, the two men locked in conversation as though they weren't fighting to the death. The one who faltered was Hashirama. If regret is owed, it is his burden to bear, not mine. I have always walked the correct path. Kagome smiled faintly, realizing there was no point in revealing the truths he had uncovered. There's no point in telling him. He, like me, will only ever trust his own judgment. Very well, Kagome said. But I believe I am the one who is correct. Chakra erupted from Kagome, dark threads of energy wrapping around his wrists as his strength surged. With a sharp movement, Kagome broke free from Madara's scythe. Madara leapt back, observing with interest. Such dense energy. Even for an Uchiha, this is remarkable. Let me ask, Kagome, Madara said, his tone curious. What is the correct path you claim to follow? Kageme's smile grew wider, his twin blades humming with energy. That doesn't matter. Victory will make my path the correct one. The defeated have no voice. Madara's laughter echoed across the battlefield. Well said, Kagome. Well said. The forest around them was gone, consumed by fire. The barren land was now their stage. I can see it, the hunger for battle in your eyes. You're like me, and yet, you carry Izuna's clarity. Madara's voice softened. It brings me great joy to meet you. Kageme's gaze sharpened. You and Izuna were simply born before me. Don't get the wrong idea. With a sharp motion, Madara adjusted his stance, holding his gunbai in one hand and his scythe in the other. Introductions are over, Madara said, his smile returning. Now, let's begin. The two warriors collided with a thunderous roar, their clash shaking the very earth beneath them. For a man who emerged from the Warring States period, battle had become second nature to Madara Uchiha. No matter what angle Kagome launched his attacks from, Madara responded with precision, countering with the most appropriate techniques at the best possible moment. This was the first time Sukuna extended his power directly into the external world. Until now, Kagami had only drawn upon Sukuna's cursed energy before or after battles. But now, simply drawing was no longer sufficient. Kagami enveloped Sukuna's cursed energy with his own chakra, forcibly transforming it into a combat-ready energy supply. It was akin to converting a fixed power source into a mobile battery. If Sukuna's perspective before had been akin to watching through a screen, now he felt every sensation as if it were his own body. Though his true form remained sealed, much of Sukuna's cursed energy was being siphoned. Had Sukuna chosen to resist with full force, he could have disrupted the energy flow. But Sukuna welcomed this development. Take more. Take even more. Sooner or later, you will grow addicted to this power. Kagami, for his part, saw no issue in using Sukuna's power. After all, what master would refuse their steed's strength? The clash of twin blades against Madara's scythe reverberated, generating waves of sound. Madara's aging body restrained him from large, sweeping attacks, but his movements were ghost-like, his scythe striking down unpredictably. He resembled nothing less than the Grim Reaper itself. By contrast, Kagami's movements were agile and fluid, his every action precise. He darted and glided, each motion flawless, exuding a beauty and grace that made the battle seem almost choreographed. For many, the UCHIHA's combat style evoked an idealized elegance. Watching Kagami, Madara saw a reflection of his younger self. I once encountered a clan of ninja who manipulated ghostly energy. They tamed cursed entities and engraved them upon their bodies with seals, borrowing their strength in combat. Tell me, Kagami, does an Uchiha like you truly need to rely on such filthy power? Madara could not see Sukuna directly, but his vast experience made it clear. The energy surrounding Kagami was utterly malevolent, its nature unmistakably vile. Filthy. Boy. Slay him. Cut this decrepit fool to pieces. Sukuna bellowed, his voice brimming with fury. Take all the power you want. Kagami ignored Sukuna's ravings, his voice calm as he replied, If I can master the Sharingan, what's a mere cursed entity in comparison? Well said, Madara acknowledged without hesitation. The Sharingan in Madara's eyes spun wildly, their crimson glow intensifying. In that case, let me test your mastery of the Uchiha strength. A tidal wave of oppressive chakra surged forth, an unparalleled force that blanketed the battlefield in an instant. Suddenly, Kagami found himself on a blood-soaked battlefield, echoes of screams and clashing steel surrounding him. In the heart of the battle stood an indescribable hand, its form shifting between aged, youthful, and decayed states, clutching a pitch-black spear that seemed to pierce through time itself. Pain seared through Kagami's chest, a sharp agony that felt all too real. A gaping hole appeared where his heart should be. This was the Uchiha's greatest weapon, Genjutsu. Madara's mastery of illusion was unrivaled, ineffective only against the likes of Hashirama. His Sharingan loomed over the battlefield like twin crimson moons, their sheer size dwarfing Kagami. Compared to this sea of overwhelming ocular power, Kagami was like a mere grain of sand. But within this boundless tide, black and red threads began weaving together, forming a canopy that shielded him. The threads grew denser, weaving into a chariot, complete with steed and rider. Kagami stood tall upon this spectral chariot, the hole in his chest mended. Madara's massive blood-red eyes stared down at him from above. You haven't unlocked the Mangekyo Sharingan? For the first time, Madara appeared genuinely shocked. The power Kagami had displayed, both through their earlier physical exchanges and now in the clash of Genjutsu, far exceeded the capabilities of a standard three-tomo Sharingan. Madara had assumed Kagami's ocular prowess rivaled even his own early days with the Mangekyo. Yet this boy had not even reached that stage. I've refrained because I have no intention of harming my kin, Kagami said, his voice steady. My goal is to obtain an eternal source of ocular power, without the unnecessary sacrifices others have made. Impressive, Madara admitted, his voice tinged with rare approval. Very impressive. The colossal red eyes in the sky seemed to shimmer with admiration. In that moment, Madara shed his older visage, revealing his youthful form clad in crimson armor. Bloodlust and excitement radiated from him as he stepped forward, his every movement filled with vitality. Kagami, you truly are extraordinary. In Genjutsu, the clash of wills was everything. If one combatant faltered, be it due to fear, doubt, or reverence, they would immediately lose. Though his physical body was weakened, Madara's spiritual energy remained unmatched. Yet Kagami's mental fortitude was equally unyielding. This was his domain. Kagami extended his arms, his fingers crossing like wings as a sinister grin spread across his face. From the shadows of his chariot, monstrous forms began to emerge. The first beast took flight, its visage grotesque, a monkey's face, a tiger's claws, a snake's tail, and a pair of massive eagle wings. From the legends of old, the new had returned to life. One after another, the monstrous creatures surged forth, an endless tide of shadowy horrors. In release, Massacre of the New. The first wave of creatures met a massive blue blade, their forms disintegrating upon contact. Madara's skeletal Susanoo loomed over the battlefield, its sword cleaving through dozens of beasts with each swing. This is the ultimate jutsu of the Mangekyo Sharingan, Madara declared. Both offensive and defensive, its power rivals that of the tailed beasts. This is Susanoo. Kagami's smirk widened as the remnants of the shattered beasts reassembled, their liquid-like forms pooling together. He raised his hand, his voice brimming with dark amusement. Tell me, Madara-sama, when you say rivals the tailed beasts, surely you mean the nine tails specifically? Madara's expression shifted, his youthful face displaying a flicker of surprise. Of course. What other beasts could compare? You're absolutely right. The liquid shadows condensed, taking on an enormous, feral shape. 9 black tails swayed ominously as a monstrous figure emerged, its crimson eyes burning with malice. The battlefield quaked beneath its roar. Behold, Madara-sama, Kagami said, his voice dripping with mockery. This is my answer to your Susanoo. 2 titanic forces stood poised for destruction, their clash inevitable. A crimson moon hung high, casting its eerie glow over the world of illusions. Beneath it stood 2 towering behemoths, like mythical creatures brought to life. The calamity of the ninja world for a millennium, the Nine Tails. The divine warrior, Susanoo. Show me your full strength and let me savor this, Uchiha Kagami. A radiant blue slash descended, cleaving the ground in 2. A massive chasm split the battlefield, separating the 2 colossal figures. Kagami remained silent, his eyes cold and calculating as his hands formed a seal. From the skies above, black and crimson droplets began to fall. Arrogance, hatred, sorrow, disgust, and desire. An endless torrent of negative emotions flooded the world. For an ordinary person, a single moment in this environment would warp their mind beyond repair. Void of yang release, purine particles gathered before the dark Nine Tails, forming an enormous sphere of energy. The oppressive pressure caused the massive beast to sink under its own weight. Just a Een-based tailed beast bomb? Madara's voice carried a hint of disdain. I'm impressed you even managed to form it. More accurately, it's a Een-style Rasengan. Kagami's lips curved upward. Or maybe we should call it a Rasengan cannon. Within Susanoo, Madara crossed his arms, exuding the confidence of a veteran warrior. Well then, let's begin. As his black hair billowed in the air, memories of his battles with Hashirama surged forth. Time had dulled many things, but regrets lingered. If only things had been different back then. No. In a flash, Susanoo's blade struck, tearing through the void as if severing reality itself. Impressive. Madara chuckled with satisfaction, leaning forward. So your attack began long before I noticed. The enormous black sphere of energy wasn't the true attack. It was the subtle, insidious black and crimson rain. In Genjutsu, a battle of willpower, even a slight crack in resolve could spell defeat. Regret was the easiest emotion to exploit, corroding a person's will. You noticed, did you? Kagami grinned, unbothered by having his trick exposed. Distracting attention to mask a hidden kill. This strategy reminds me of a certain Senju fool, Madara remarked, his voice tinged with amusement. You must mean Tobarama Senju. I respect his tactical mindset, Kagami replied. Madara's expression darkened slightly. Kagami, it seems you lack the grandeur of Hashirama. Enough. Stop droning on about the past. Kagami raised his blade, his 3-tomo Sharingan radiating unrelenting ferocity. I am not any of your past opponents. If you remain stuck in your memories, you're unworthy of my challenge. Madara, I came here with the intent to kill you. If you wish to live, face me with the resolve to die. Ha 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 ha. Before Madara's laughter could subside, Kagami attacked. The Dark Ninetales unleashed its energy cannon, but instead of an explosion, it expanded outward, forming a black dome around Susanoo. Madara's brows furrowed. A dark cloak technique? Really? An Uchiha using a jutsu designed to counter other Uchiha. What a ridiculous choice, Madara muttered. The technique disrupted the brain's ability to process visual input, effectively nullifying all sight within its range. It wasn't just a technique to obscure vision. Its sinister whispers could erode even the strongest psyche. Annoying. Within the darkness, the clash of titanic figures raged on. The Dark Ninetales slashed at Susanoo with its claws, leaving deep gashes in the azure armor. But each severed tail morphed into a serpentine shadow, coiling around Susanoo, restricting its movements. Even when shattered, the serpents reformed, endlessly pressing the attack. Madara's patience wore thin as he decimated tail after tail. A piercing sound echoed as the black dome tore open, revealing the battlefield once more. Madara's Susanoo loomed tall, unscathed but visibly strained. He turned to the Black Ninetales, now stripped of its tails. No more tricks. But Kagami was nowhere to be found. Madara's gaze shifted skyward. Against the backdrop of the crimson moon, Kagami stood atop his spectral chariot, gripping the reins in one hand. Behind him surged an army of black skeletal warriors, a tide of death poised to descend. Enough games. Madara swung Susanoo's blade. A brilliant azure light illuminated the entire illusionary space. With a single slash, the skeletal army and chariot were obliterated, leaving no trace behind. The gap in power was overwhelming. A sudden crackling filled the air as black-red lightning spread across the sky. A deafening boom followed, and the ground seemed to buckle under an immense force. This energy. Madara's excitement reignited as his blood boiled with anticipation. So you're finally unleashing it. The azure flames of Susanoo roared, expanding its size further. With a deafening roar, a pair of massive wings unfurled. Susanoo had achieved its final form, complete and majestic. Kagami's twin blades, Mingzuan and Shirayuki, glowed with black lightning as he crossed them before him. His black hair danced wildly as his crimson eyes shone with murderous intent. Deep within the sealed realm, Sukuna extended his hand, black-red lightning sparking at his fingertips. He had always been the strongest in his previous world, constrained only by its limits. Here, his power grew endlessly, fed by the ninja world's boundless negativity. This world is truly twisted, Sukuna mused. The sheer malice saturating this realm was beyond anything he had encountered before. Perhaps the gods feared me, so they sealed me here. Or perhaps they were simply afraid of being consumed. The seal on Sukuna's cage cracked open, allowing Kagami to siphon his cursed energy freely. Sukuna's malevolent grin widened. Too deliberate. Never in my life have I encountered a human as deranged as you, Kagami. You treat me like a wild beast, as if you could tame me? With his razor-sharp claws glinting, Sukuna roared, "Then prove it, Uchiha Kagami." Back on the battlefield, Kagami swung his twin blades, sending arcs of black lightning cutting through the air. A booming roar erupted as two crescent-shaped strikes tore toward Madara's complete Susanoo. Simultaneously, Sukuna unleashed his own devastating slash from within his cage, tearing through the barrier between realms. The Cursed King and the ambitious Uchiha struck in unison. The ensuing explosion consumed the entire battlefield. A blinding light engulfed the world, erasing everything in its path. Crash. It was as if a massive mirror shattered, producing chaotic, jarring sounds. The illusory world could no longer withstand the immense impact and began to collapse. Reality. Twin blades and scythe halted mid-air. The wrinkles on Uchiha Madara's aged face eased into a faint smile. In terms of sheer ocular power, you surpass even Izuna. Kagami. You are a true genius. In a ghost-like motion, Madara's figure blurred. In the next instant, he appeared before Uchiha Kagami, his deathly scythe gleaming as it swept toward him. Slash. The blade stopped just short of Kagami's neck. Madara furrowed his brows slightly. Their final clash of ocular power had yielded no definitive victor. Before the conclusion, the illusory world had already disintegrated. Yet, Kagami's eyes remained tightly shut, unmoved as though he was oblivious to the imminent danger. What trick was he trying to play this time? Madara hesitated. It wasn't that he feared Kagami pulling off some unexpected move. Rather, he was concerned that Kagami might actually be in trouble. A single misstep could kill him prematurely. After all, Madara was nearing the end of his life. If Kagami were to perish now, it would be a waste. Deciding to test the waters, Madara shifted his strike, avoiding Kagami's vital points and aiming at his face instead. Crack. Madara's pupils contracted, his expression sharpening. A mouth suddenly appeared on Kagami's cheek, biting down on the scythe. Beneath Kagami's left Sharingan, an additional eye formed, dark and cold, radiating malevolence. "So you're the cursed entity residing within Kagami's body," Madara murmured, retracting his scythe with a tug on the chain. "You're quite an unruly creature." From Madara's palm extended a translucent purple chain, shimmering faintly. "Let me leash you properly." "Just as I thought. Soon enough, I'll tear you apart, old man." The sinister voice from Kagami's face was hoarse and rasping, like something gnawing at bones. Boom. A surge of blood-colored energy rippled outward in violent waves. Black markings spread across Kagami's body like a creeping web. So this is the taste of the shinobi world. This new world. The aroma of new humanity. Exquisite. Give me control, boy. Hand over your body. An indescribable aura of malice emanated, thick as a blackened fog. This pure malevolence surpassed even that of the Nine Tails. Madara let the purple chain fade and leaned back into a stone chair he conjured. "Kagami, since you dared to harness such a creature, let's see if you can tame it yourself. After all, you are an Uchiha." The black and red energy spread like an unending tide. But no matter how much Sukuna raged and roared, the boy standing before him remained unmoving. Inside the mental realm, the crimson ceiling gate opened slightly. Sukuna's upper body emerged as endless bones and blood poured out. Meanwhile, Kagami stood atop the bloody sea, his gaze cold and indifferent as he watched Sukuna. The pain was excruciating. It felt as though his soul was being ground in a meat grinder, melted in a furnace, and reforged, only to be shattered and reforged again in a vicious cycle. A millennium's worth of malevolence. The wrath, regret, and hatred were ceaseless waves crashing against Kagami's spiritual form. From the sea of blood emerged countless hands, trying to drag him down into the abyss. Sukuna's memories began flooding into Kagami's mind. Ugly humans, endlessly repeating their cycles of love and loss, greed and anger, longing and hatred. So monotonous, though the taste was decent. "Kagami Uchiha, you and I are one." Sukuna stretched his forearms wide, as though to embrace him. "This isn't consumption, it's unification. You'll become me, and I'll become you. From separate worlds, ours is a destiny most wondrous. Come now. Together we'll become the perfect being." Breathing hurt. It felt as though his lungs were tearing apart. His feet felt heavy, as though his bones had shattered. Something gnawed at his heart. But it didn't matter. No amount of pain mattered. The void within him had long been filled. He bore the weight of too many expectations. He couldn't lose. Kagami extended his hand. "Do you realize, Sukuna? This seal doesn't just restrain you, it also binds me. At some point, I realized that with my current power, I couldn't fully open the seal. Have you not noticed? Whether it's your black slash, my own power, or even Madara's, all of it has been channeled into the seal. I told you once, didn't I? One day, I'll leash you like a dog. You didn't shatter the seal. We did. All of this was within my plan. Step by step, that's my principle." Crack. Boom. Sukuna sensed it immediately and looked up. A massive black spear appeared in the dim void, inscribed with densely packed sealing runes. Hiss. As Kagami's hand fell, the spear followed suit, impaling Sukuna through the chest and pinning him between the two realms. Silence. A moment of stillness. Then Sukuna erupted into wild laughter, his mirth echoing like thunder. "Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating, Uchiha Kagami. Because of you, I've started to take an interest in humans. You will release me eventually. I now look forward to your body even more. You're right, delicacies must be savored slowly, step by step." The sea of blood and corpses receded back into the seal. Kagami turned and walked away. Before leaving, he cast one last glance over his shoulder, his crimson eyes burning with contempt for the so-called King of Curses. "Wait patiently. The leash you're waiting for, I'll bring it to you myself. Uchiha Kagami pushed his disheveled hair back as he looked at the leisurely figure of Madara seated on the stone chair. Getting too old to fight, old man? Madara rested his hands on his knees, appearing no different from an ordinary elder. There's no point in continuing. You've achieved your goal, haven't you? Besides, this body of mine is almost at its limit. Kagami seemed to recall something. By logic, Madara shouldn't have been able to leave the ghetto statue, as he relied on it to sustain his life. He hadn't thought much of it initially, subconsciously believing that if Madara had the ability to come out and fight, it wasn't strange. Perhaps it was some kind of wood clone technique. But given Madara's current words, the living corpse reincarnation technique, even without the Rinnegan, he could still use such a method? Kagami narrowed his eyes, feeling slightly offended. Is this some kind of clone technique? You really underestimate me. Madara remained composed, his tone flat. My real body cannot leave, and this technique allows me to utilize my full ocular power. A pitiful state to be in. This paltry power is now the best I can muster. Madara's characteristic features gradually faded, revealing pale skin. It was a white Zetsu body. A faint rustling sound came from between cracks in the rocky ground, and a white Zetsu with pale green short hair emerged. Kagami boy, Lord Madara has summoned you. I got it. Just a moment. Kagami unfurled a scroll and approached the lifeless white Zetsu clone. This is Lord Madara's research creation. You can't just. He didn't say I couldn't. It's dead anyway. What's wrong with taking it for experimentation? But. Shut up. Madara's true body resided beneath this land, deep in a vast underground chamber illuminated only by candlelight. Dark, damp, and desolate. He's really asking for arthritis, living in this kind of place at his age. Seated in a simple stone chair, Madara slowly opened his eyes. They were a pair of crimson Sharingan with 3 tomo. You've come, Kagami. Kagami's gaze shifted to behind Madara, where gnarled wooden tendrils extended into the darkness, emanating an aura of immense malice. The ghetto statue. Reigning in his curiosity, Kagami locked eyes with Madara. What do you want? Madara chuckled faintly. Weren't you the one looking for me? And now, after borrowing my power to tame that cursed entity, this is the attitude you show? Kagami found a chair, sat down, and crossed his legs. His tone was indifferent. That's why I politely asked what you wanted. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come down here. By the way, old man, your retirement home is terrible. Kagami, you're intelligent. You must have noticed something peculiar about that white Zetsu I used. The body I borrowed. Kagami was well aware of everything, but chose not to reveal too much. That black Zetsu was likely parasitizing Madara's body even now. Very strong yang release energy. Quite valuable for research. Madara leaned on a black staff, his tone heavy. The Sharingan represents the pinnacle of Yin release and symbolizes the Uchiha clan. Meanwhile, Yang release is represented by the Senju clan's vitality. If you wish to obtain eternal vision without harming your brothers, I have a correct path to offer. The words deeply moved Madara. Strength and talent were insufficient to sway him. What truly touched him was Kagami's earlier statement. It was something Madara hadn't realized until long after Izuna's death, while he brooded alone in the dark crypt. Perhaps there was a way to protect one's loved ones. White Zetsu is the product of my experiments with Hashirama's cells. It contains immense vitality, yang release energy. I specifically prepared that white Zetsu for you. You can transplant a portion of it into your body. By doing so, when you awaken the Mangekyo, it should nourish your eyes, removing the curse of blindness. It's not a curse. Kagami's face remained expressionless. Yin and Yang are interdependent. When Yin and Yang are separated, vitality ceases to exist. Excessive use of the Mangekyo leads to blindness because of an imbalance between Yin and Yang. There are 2 solutions to the blindness problem. One is to balance Yin and Yang. The other is to merge 2 pairs of closely related Mangekyo Sharingan. Extremes of Yin produce Yang, and extremes of Yang produce Yin. When pushed to the limit, balance is achieved. The shadows obscured Madara's expression, but a long sigh escaped him. Kagami, you came too late. If there was anything Madara regretted in his life, it was failing to protect Izuna. Sure Sway, that's your brother's name, isn't it? As an elder brother, You are far more qualified than I ever was." Such profound insights had taken Madara years of deciphering the Sage of Six Paths stone tablet to grasp. But Kagami. Pulling himself from his reverie, Madara stared at Kagami, his gaze deep. "Then, do you intend to accumulate the ultimate Yin release and use the resulting reversal to obtain eternal vision?" Kagami shook his head. "Yes and no. I have my own plan. Regardless, a balance between Yin and Yang is ideal. Kagami, you might even acquire eyes like mine someday." He referred to the Rinnegan. Madara couldn't predict what methods Kagami would use, but he eagerly anticipated it. After some thought, Madara decided against mentioning the Moon's Eye plan. The Sage of Six Paths had envisioned a perfect plan for a peaceful shinobi world. But Kagami, as he was now, wouldn't accept such a vision. He hadn't yet despaired of the world. Besides, Kagami didn't seem like someone who sought peace. "I won't pry into your plans. If you need more, feel free to return for another White Zetsu." White Zetsu. Uchiha Obito is the successor I've chosen. I will prepare a trial for him. He has the potential to awaken the Mangekyo but requires the right guidance. For this, some Konoha ninja will have to die. Do not interfere. This was an exchange. Kakashi. Rin. Kagami chuckled. "Do as you please. What if one of the dead is your junior, Kakashi? Aside from a few Uchiha clansmen, the lives of others mean nothing to me. My existence isn't to shield them. I've already warned Kakashi. If he dies due to his incompetence, he deserves it." Kagami rose from his seat, supporting himself on his knees. "Old man, I suppose we'll never meet again. Let me wish you a peaceful death in advance. Farewell." With that, Kagami turned to leave, clearly displeased by the dark environment. "Heh." Watching Kagami's retreating figure, Madara muttered softly. "We will meet again." In the dense forest, Uchiha Kagami had just crossed the land of rain and was now within the borders of the land of birds. Since Obito hadn't yet been prepared, and Nagato's involvement wasn't in motion either, the land of rain was still under Hanzo's rule. Passing through had been relatively simple. Kagami leaned against a plump orange cat, whose hefty frame didn't impede its agility as it darted through the forest. Despite its round appearance, this cat, named Revolver, was astonishingly swift. His summoning hawk needed rest, so Kagami alternated between his aerial companion and this portly feline. Revolver wasn't meant for combat. Kagami only needed it for comfortable travel. It was so soft that he could even nap on its back. Sunlight filtered through the treetops, flickering across his face and the pages of the book he held. His recent battle with Madara had fulfilled every one of his objectives. First, he'd used Madara's power to unlock the seal on Sukuna. This was akin to forging a key and keeping it in his possession. When the time came, he could release Sukuna as he saw fit. Second, he had extracted a portion of Madara's ocular power, preserving it in his mental space via transcription seals. Kagami didn't need this energy for himself. It was bait for a certain fiery orange fox. Enough bait to provoke a rampage. Third, he had collected some White Zetsu samples. Initially, Kagami had considered using White Zetsu's Yang release cells to counterbalance his ocular strain, but that plan was no longer viable. Both Sukuna and Kagami's Yin release energy had grown too rapidly. Sukuna was like a corpse flower thriving on the blood-soaked soil of the ninja world. Attempting to achieve perfect Mangekyo with his current Yin energy would render White Zetsu's cells ineffective for balancing Yin and Yang. Moreover, Kagami was reluctant to implant foreign elements into his body. Instead, he focused on his two proposed solutions: amassing immense ocular power until it naturally balanced Yin and Yang, or using the turning point of Yin to produce Yang. However, the former wasn't perfect. It diverged from Kagami's vision of a flawless evolution. Returning to the essence of the issue, converting his colossal Yin energy into Yang was the true solution. This required mastering reversed cursed energy techniques. Implementing this technique using chakra was exponentially more complex than with cursed energy. It was like comparing the Pythagorean theorem to Euler's equations. But Kagami believed he alone could solve this. Now, he was headed for a critical piece of his plan: the dragon vein of Rorin. The lifeblood of the earth itself, the dragon vein was a vast reservoir of energy. With it, his perfect Mangekyo plan would finally be within reach. As for White Zetsu, Kagami didn't need it, but his little brother Shursui might. He truly spared no effort for his family. Lord Kagami, Granny Cat asked me to remind you about the last payment for the ninja tools. When will it be settled? Revolver's voice was light and crisp, a stark contrast to its hefty figure. Snap. Kagami shut his book. They've raised prices by 30%. Tell her to lower it. But Granny Cat said there's a war going on, and she's already prioritizing the Uchiha clan. Ninja tools are in high demand, and the price is fair. The Uchiha clan has worked with her for generations. Just because supplies are tight doesn't mean she can raise prices. And you, asking me for money, are you my summon or that miserly old hag's? Of course I'm yours, my lord. But no buts. Tell her I'll pay the original price. Take it or leave it. Oh. Revolver trudged forward dejectedly. It was only passing along the message, but Kagami's tone had been harsh. Suddenly, Kagami grabbed the scruff of Revolver's neck, lifting the 800-pound feline off the ground. Meow. Revolver turned its head, its dark eyes filled with confusion and a hint of fear. Stupid cat, you almost walked into an explosive tag trap. The faint sound of footsteps emerged from behind a tree. Impressive as always, Crimson Eye. A bounty of 90 million Rio. Looks like traps are useless against you. Green eyes, a Takigakure headband, and a masked face. It was Kakuzu. Kagami tossed Revolver to the side, the fat cat landing on a branch like a thick blanket. Kakuzu the bounty hunter. What a coincidence. Still, 90 million? That's not even 3 Asumas. Do they underestimate me? It really is a coincidence, Kakuzu replied. I came to this small country to hunt a 2 million bounty target and stumbled upon you. Black tendrils extended from Kakuzu's sleeves, writhing ominously. Your forehead protector reminds me of my first fight with a Konoha ninja. Hashirama Senju, the first Hokage. Kagami picked his ear nonchalantly. I fought Uchiha Madara just a few days ago. You're mocking me, kid. Kagami chuckled. You started with the jokes. I'm just telling the truth. Enough. Kakuzu's gaze turned icy. Konoha's greatest genius, all alone. This 90 million is mine. 3 minutes later. Kagami had Kakuzu pinned to the ground, one hand gripping his neck. Kakuzu's hands clawed at Kagami's arm, to no avail. Black threads lay scattered, twitching weakly. Kagami's crimson Sharingan spun lazily. Where's the stash? The Uchiha clan's funds were running low lately, and he'd stumbled upon a fat sheep. What luck. Kill me if you dare. I'll never tell you. Kakuzu roared defiantly. Good spirit, Kagami mused, a dangerous glint in his eye. But for a ninja, dying is often the easy part. Living, now that's hard. Kakuzu's green eyes glazed over, caught in Kagami's genjutsu. Kagami pulled a rope from his sleeve, tying it securely around Kakuzu's neck. Carrying rope was standard ninja practice, after all. Revolver, keep moving. Lord Kagami, were you about to call me fat just now? One end of the rope was tied to Revolver's tail, and Kakuzu bounced along the ground like a discarded rug. Kagami's expression remained stoic. No, you misheard. Amidst the boundless desert, the brutal sun bore down upon 2 figures traversing the barren sands. Behind Uchiha Kagami, Kakuzu was being dragged across the sand, bound and bruised. His flesh was shredded, and every inch of him was caked with blood and sand. Kagami sighed, a look of admiration crossing his face. As expected from a ninja who lived through the era of the first Hokage. Your willpower is truly unyielding. Kakuzu, breathing heavily, let out a bitter laugh. You can kill me, but you'll never get my money. You think a bit of genjutsu torture will break me? Kagami nodded solemnly, as if moved. I respect you. A man like you doesn't deserve to die here. Go on, you're free to leave. Kakuzu's eyes narrowed, his dull green pupils scrutinizing Kagami deeply. Uchiha Kagami. I must admit, you share the same boldness as Hashirama Senju. Humph, work on raising your bounty. I'll come for you again. With that, Kakuzu tore off the ropes binding him and turned to leave. He trusted that someone as strong as Kagami wouldn't stoop to trickery. Heh, you may have the upper hand now, Kagami. But in 50 years? Just you wait. Watching Kakuzu walk off, Kagami casually pulled a bank book from his pocket. The password is 4 twos, followed by the kanji 4 takigakure. Remember it, and deliver this to that stingy old hag. Tell her to withdraw the money immediately. He handed the bank book to his summon, Revolver, who was still in his oversized cat form. With this, not only will we pay off the previous ninja tool balance, but we'll also cover the Uchiha clan's tool expenses for an entire year. Revolver's ears twitched nervously. He'd overheard Kakuzu muttering the bank details under his breath during the torture. Who knew bounty hunting was so profitable? There was no way Kagami would kill someone as valuable as Kakuzu. The veteran bounty hunter would only grow more determined to earn money after realizing his stash was gone. Next time they crossed paths, Kagami could bleed him dry again. Years ago, Kagami might have struggled against someone like Kakuzu. But now, with his current strength and insider knowledge of Kakuzu's techniques, it only took 3 minutes to subdue him. Still, Kakuzu had some admirable traits. Despite enduring relentless genjutsu torture, he'd only revealed the password after losing consciousness. With a puff of smoke, Revolver vanished, returning to the cat realm. Kagami continued walking, his destination not far. According to his map, the ancient kingdom of Rorin was nearby. However, maps were often imprecise. Pressing his fingers against the sandy ground, Kagami sent waves of chakra into the earth, expanding his sensory range. He lacked Minato's innate sensing abilities, but compensated by using sheer chakra reserves to cover a broader area. Closing his eyes, he visualized the terrain within a 10-kilometer radius. Nothing. Such a barren place, he muttered. No wonder the land of wind is so fond of war. Hours later, Kagami's brows furrowed as he detected a strange chakra signature. Unlike a typical ninja's, it felt hollow, as if it lacked vitality. He leaped in its direction, soon spotting a faint speck of orange amidst the dunes. As he approached, the figure noticed him as well, immediately adopting a defensive stance. Kagami halted a short distance away, a faint smile playing on his lips. The ninja world is small, isn't it? Or perhaps rogue ninja, like you just prefer desolate places. Scorpion. Uchiha Kagami, the man muttered, his expression darkening. Chakra threads extended from his fingers, ready to summon his puppet, the third Kazekage. Kagami's reputation as Crimson Eye preceded him. While Scorpion, or Sasori, had earned his S-rank rogue ninja status, he knew he couldn't compare to someone who could sway the outcomes of entire battles between nations. Aren't you supposed to be playing cat and mouse with Tsukumo Hatake? What brings you here? Kagami didn't rush to attack. He was tired of constant fights. Besides, fighting someone like Sasori would end too quickly to be entertaining. Sasori's eyes narrowed, his voice low. The land of wind is my home. What's so strange about me being here? The real question is, what are you doing away from the front lines? Kagami paused thoughtfully, then chuckled. I get it. You're here for Rorin, aren't you? Out of puppets after fighting Tsukumo, so now you're looking for a restock. Sasori stiffened, panic flashing through his mind. Damn it! Am I under genjutsu? No, that's impossible. I don't rely on sight to perceive the world. I'm a human puppet. So how? Did I say something to give it away? No, his words hadn't revealed anything. With a puff, the third Kazekage puppet floated into the air, Sasori's face set in a grim scowl. Crimson Eye. Let's see if you live up to your name. Kagami casually swiped his fingers through the air, sending an invisible slash that severed Sasori's chakra threads. As the Kazekage puppet dropped to the ground, Sasori moved to reconnect the threads, only to hear Kagami's voice again. Your core is in your left atrium. Destroy that, and you're finished. The cold, emotionless tone sent chills down Sasori's spine. Your secrets are laid bare before these eyes. Tsukumo might have spared you, but don't expect me to do the same. In a flash, Kagami appeared beside Sasori, his hand clamping down on the rogue ninja's shoulder. Though Sasori's body was a puppet, he still felt a deathly chill emanating from Kagami's touch. I'm heading to Rorin myself. Maybe I'll let you keep some of the puppets I don't find useful. Join me, or... Kagami's fingers tightened. You have 3 seconds left to live. Fine, Sasori finally muttered. Traveling with you might offer some new artistic inspiration. Kagami smirked, releasing Sasori. Good choice. Let's get along, shall we, Red Sand Sasori? The two figures moved through the desert, Sasori trailing slightly behind Kagami. The biting sandstorm didn't faze Sasori's puppet body, but he couldn't help noticing something strange about Kagami. The sand seemed to avoid him entirely, falling straight to the ground just before touching his skin. He's maintaining a chakra shield against the sand. Constantly? What a monster. Sasori, who had assassinated the third Kazekage, felt no urge to strike from behind. Eventually, Kagami stopped, pressing his hand to the ground once more. A faint smile crossed his lips. Found it. Reborn, an ancient city-state hidden within the vast deserts of the Land of Wind, stood as a testament to a bygone era. Its towering spires and intricate architecture set it apart from any other settlement in the shinobi world. The sight alone was enough to intrigue anyone familiar with the practicality demanded by the harsh desert environment. These structures should not exist here. Too grand, too urbanized, too unnatural. The secret of this anomaly lay beneath the sands. Reborn's queen wielded a unique power to manipulate the dragon vein, an immense reservoir of earthbound energy buried deep underground. This ability allowed her to draw forth the land's energy and mold it to the city's needs. As Kagami surveyed the sprawling towers of Reborn, Sasori unfurled an ancient scroll, his voice cold and measured. It seems the Queen of Reborn has forsaken the ancestral laws. Kagami turned, his keen eyes catching the tension in Sasori's movements. You have intel I don't? Care to elaborate? Sasori hesitated for a moment before speaking, his words deliberate and laced with bitterness. My father was a member of the Reborn royal family. Kagami raised an eyebrow, his curiosity piqued. You? But aren't you Chiyo's grandson? Doesn't that make your father the son of the first Kazekage? Sasori's expression darkened. My father was a redhead. The first Kazekage and Lady Chiyo had black and violet hair respectively. My mother was their child. My father married into the family. Kagami nodded thoughtfully, piecing together the familial intricacies. So what's this? A long-lost prince's quest to reclaim his kingdom. Sasori's face twisted into a grimace, his puppet-like features straining against the irony. The Reborn royal line only bestows the ability to control the dragon vein upon its women, what they call the royal vein. I was never a contender for the throne. His tone grew colder. All I seek here are resources. I'll turn my so-called kin into puppets if that's what it takes to fulfill my goals. Kagami smirked, his voice casual yet cutting. Your goal is revenge against Tsukumo Hatake, isn't it? The puppet master's silence was answer enough. Then you better make it worth watching, Kagami teased. Sasori dismissed Kagami's taunts and redirected the conversation. The dragon vein, if that's what you're after, is impossible to harness. Many have tried, none have succeeded. The most anyone's managed is sealing it away. Kagami's lips curled into a confident smile. Just because others failed doesn't mean I will. That unwavering self-assurance made Sasori pause. For a fleeting moment, doubt crept into his thoughts, but he quickly dismissed it. Let's see how far you get, Sasori muttered, clutching his scroll tightly. Kagami, however, wasn't merely chasing power. He had a deeper purpose for coming to Reborn, one rooted in the very fabric of time and space. Years ago, an incident tied to the dragon vein had led to the fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze, encountering a future version of Naruto Uzumaki. That meeting held significance far beyond what anyone in the present could comprehend. The dragon vein possessed a mysterious connection to time itself. Kagami needed to confirm something crucial. Would Naruto appear? Would a glimpse of the future show him whether this world was the original Naruto timeline? If it was, had his presence already altered the course of history? And if this world was entirely separate, what did that mean for everything he sought to achieve? Let's wait for the festival to start, Kagami said, a cryptic smile tugging at his lips. Days passed, and Reborn's festival preparations reached their climax. Under the cover of night, Kagami sat atop a high tower with Sasori, a simple meal in hand. Even with your strength, Sasori remarked, his voice tinged with disdain, you still indulge in such mundane things as eating and sleeping. What a waste. I don't like interruptions during meals, Kagami replied coldly. Eating and sleeping are among the few joys of being human. Don't take them away from me. He shot Sasori a sidelong glance. And your crude puppet body doesn't exactly scream perfection, does it? On the morning of the festival, the city came alive with the sound of drums and cheers. Kagami and Sasori observed from a hidden vantage point, their sharp eyes scanning the crowd. Sasori's keen senses picked up on something disturbing. "Those aren't real people," he muttered, narrowing his eyes. "They're puppets. All of them." A young woman with crimson hair emerged onto a high balcony, surrounded by the lifeless puppets masquerading as celebrants. She was the Queen of Rorin. According to the timeline, this was the moment when Naruto was supposed to arrive and save her. Kagami's heart raced as he scanned the area, his chakra senses stretched to their limit. But he felt nothing, no sign of Naruto, no trace of the Nine-Tails chakra. The queen stepped forward, and the balcony beneath her crumbled. She plummeted, her scream cutting through the festival's fanfare. Kagami's hand flicked almost lazily, a kunai sailing through the air and pinning her robes to a beam just before she hit the ground. Sasori glanced at Kagami, catching the eerie gleam in his crimson eyes. "You're excited," Sasori noted, his voice cautious. Kagami's smile widened, his joy impossible to contain. "No Naruto. No predetermined future. The world is mine to shape." Turning to Sasori, he chuckled darkly. "Do you realize what this means?" This, he gestured to the city below, to the vast desert, to the very fabric of their existence. This is the moment where everything begins anew. Sasori remained silent, the weight of Kagami's declaration sinking in. Kagami's voice dropped, a rare hint of emotion breaking through his usually cold demeanor. "No chains. No fate. No certainty." He laughed, the sound echoing through the desert night like a storm breaking. "Chaos is the only truth worth living for. You, Sasori of the Red Sand, have just witnessed the birth of an untethered world." In his reflections, Kagami Uchiha acknowledged the pivotal moment when he began altering the timeline, the day Tsukumo Hatake chose exile over death. That single act created ripples that reshaped the entire shinobi world. Even now, standing at the edge of Rorin, he understood the consequences. Sasori's presence here, seeking Rorin at this time, was another butterfly effect. The simultaneous attacks on Konoha by 3 major nations, an unprecedented occurrence, was also his doing. Yet, what he feared most was the possibility of Naruto Uzumaki appearing again, an immutable sign that history was correcting itself. But no. The absence of Naruto proved one thing: the timeline had diverged beyond repair. This world was now untethered from its predetermined fate. Looking down from their perch, Kagami and Sasori saw Sarah, the Queen of Rorin, narrowly saved by Kagami's kunai. The red-haired queen, despite her near-death experience, composed herself quickly. Her sharp eyes landed on the 2 men. "Thank you for saving me," she began, her voice trembling but steady. "I am Sarah, queen of this land. I will repay your kindness." Kagami scoffed, cutting her off with a dismissive wave. "No time for mourning dramas. Sasori, keep an eye on your cousin. Just make sure she doesn't die." Sarah blinked, confused. "Cousin?" Sasori frowned, but said nothing. Their conversation was interrupted by the metallic whirring of puppets approaching. The lifeless constructs radiated a faint blue-violet glow, traces of the dragon vein's power. Kagami observed the flow of chakra, sensing its weight and purity. "This is the primordial energy of the land," he muttered. His eyes lifted toward the central tower, where a man with a scraggly beard stood, staring down at them with disbelief. "Sasori-sama." The voice carried over the battlefield. Sasori's expression darkened as recognition set in. "Mukade? Why do you look so old?" Before the man could answer, Kagami interjected with a smirk. "He's from more than 20 years in the future." Kagami's hand rose, cutting the air in a sharp motion. "Enough talk. Time to die." Countless invisible slashes tore through the approaching puppets, reducing them to nothing more than scrap. Mukade's body was severed at the waist by a single clean strike. Yet, even as his lower half collapsed, a surge of blue-violet chakra burst forth, stitching his body back together. Mukade's form warped grotesquely, swelling to an inhuman size. His upper body remained humanoid, but his lower half morphed into a massive centipede-like structure, stretching hundreds of meters long. The tower beneath him crumbled under his immense weight, collapsing into ruins. Sasori quickly pulled Sarah to safety, sealing her mouth with a piece of puppet debris to silence her protests. Watching from the ruins, Kagami's lips curled into a faint smile. Mukade roared, his voice echoing across the desert. "Sasori, behold my immortality. I have surpassed you." Electric blue flames sparked around him as he unleashed the power of the dragon vein. Kagami stood unfazed, perched on a broken tower. Mokade snarled, his voice a guttural growl. Die. Dragon vein fireball. A massive surge of blue-violet flames roared toward Kagami, threatening to engulf him entirely. Without moving, Kagami flicked his wrist, slicing the attack in two with an unseen slash. The flames curved harmlessly around him, unable to touch his body. Is that all? Kagami mused, his tone cold. Mokade screamed in frustration, unleashing an even larger torrent of flames. Kagami remained still, lifting a single hand. In his palm, a spinning blue sphere began to form. Rasengan. The spiraling sphere soon erupted into a fiery blaze, expanding to a massive size. Flames danced along its surface, radiating an intense heat that distorted the air. Kagami's voice was laced with cold amusement. Let me show you what true fire looks like. The fiery Rasengan grew, transforming into a ball of crimson fire. The light it emitted was harsh and unyielding, burning with an almost divine fury. It wasn't just fire, it was annihilation incarnate. Even in his sealed state, Sukuna felt the power of the flames. He had always prided himself on his mastery of fire, a force he considered his own. Yet, as he watched through the veil of Kagami's mind, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of unease. These flames were unlike anything he'd ever seen, cold, unmerciful, and utterly devoid of life. They didn't burn to sustain, they burned to destroy. Kagami raised his hand, the crimson sphere hovering above his palm. With a simple gesture, he launched the attack. The fiery orb descended slowly, like a falling sun. Sasori didn't wait to see the aftermath. Grabbing Sarah, he bolted toward the outskirts of the city, cursing under his breath. Damn that Kagami! Does he have no regard for anyone else? As he ran, the oppressive heat of the attack bore down on him, threatening to consume everything in its path. Mokade froze, his monstrous form trembling under the weight of Kagami's power. In his final moments, a strange thought crossed his mind. Such a magnificent death. Am I even worthy of it? Kagami's voice was calm and detached. Time to exit the stage. Flame release. Crimson hell. The world ignited in a sea of red. Flames surged in every direction, consuming the city, the puppets, and everything in between. For a moment, the desert was no more. There was only fire. A sharp and intense glow erupted as deep crimson flames shot skyward, blooming like a lotus of fire. The entire sky turned a vivid red, mirroring the inferno below. This was a vision of hell. Suspended in mid-air, Kagami Uchiha stood amidst the destruction. The ruins of the towers beneath him were nothing but shattered remnants. His ability to hover came from a technique he had once copied from Iwagakure shinobi during a clash, the light and heavy rock technique. Though he lacked the mastery of Inoki, who could freely soar the skies, levitation was well within his grasp. The fusion of Yin release and fire release had birthed a new Kekii Genkai, and it was unparalleled in power. Jiraiya's research, which Kagami had studied, proved instrumental in enhancing techniques like the Rasengan with elemental attributes. The Uchiha clan had always been known for their vast reserves of chakra, but Kagami's prowess went beyond. Even Madara had recognized that his Yin release capabilities surpassed those of Izuna, who possessed the Mangekyo Sharingan. Kagami understood one truth clearly: his path to ultimate strength lay in the development of his Yin-based abilities. The flames consumed everything in their path, reducing the surroundings to ashes. Mokade, who had boasted of his immortality, was nowhere to be seen. The crimson fire continued its relentless spread, devouring even the soil and stone. It showed no signs of extinguishing. Descending gracefully to the ground, Kagami turned his gaze toward a specific direction. In a flash, he appeared before Sasori and Sarah. Sarah, bound by a chakra string with her mouth sealed, trembled in fear. Tears streamed from her wide eyes. What is happening? Who is this terrifying man who seems to have come straight from hell? Sasori, on the other hand, struggled to suppress his emotions. Since becoming a human puppet, he hadn't felt this overwhelmed. The sight of Kagami's power had made it painfully clear: the gap between them was insurmountable. Uchiha Kagami. Are we heading to the Dragon Vein next? Using her? Sasori asked, gesturing toward Sarah. Kagami didn't bother answering. With a glance, Sarah's pupils reflected the spinning tomo of the Sharingan. Under the influence of his genjutsu, She began walking toward a specific direction. "You see how convenient the Sharingan is?" Kagami remarked casually to Sasori. "Would you like a pair for yourself?" Sasori's eyes glinted with intrigue. "And the price?" Kagami smirked. "Simple. In your next life, be born into the Uchiha clan." As Sarah led the way under Kagami's control, Sasori's fists clenched behind him. He knew. Had it not been for that earlier display of overwhelming power, he would have fought Kagami to the death, even if it meant exposing his vulnerabilities. In a massive tower hidden within the heart of Rorin, countless emaciated workers toiled endlessly, turning gears. These were the true citizens of Rorin, enslaved by Mokade to fuel his ambitions. Sasori's attention was drawn to the puppet materials scattered across the workspace, though his simmering anger was evident. Guided by Kagami's genjutsu, Sarah approached a ceiling platform. At its center was an opening that resembled an eye, from which faint streams of blue-violet energy seeped. Kagami watched intently as the bloodline of Rorin's royal family resonated with the dragon vein. Sarah's hands pressed against the seal, and the energy began to surge. The dragon vein, the Earth's lifeblood, was an immense reservoir of natural energy. Its sheer magnitude made it comparable to a tailed beast, perhaps even surpassing one. While the Nine Tails was said to have limitless chakra, even it needed time to replenish. The dragon vein, however, was inexhaustible, an anchor of stability for the world. It wasn't just raw power. It was a primordial force that could even rupture the fabric of time. The seal broke. An endless pillar of blue-violet energy shot into the heavens, accompanied by the faint roar of a dragon. The ground trembled violently, the shockwaves rippling across the landscape. "Uchiha Kagami!" Sasori called out, his voice tinged with urgency. No one can truly control the dragon vein. At best, it can be temporarily harnessed, as Mokade attempted. This power isn't meant for humans to wield. Kagami didn't respond. He leapt onto the ceiling platform, where the formation symbols danced wildly, struggling to contain the unleashed energy. If one were to look up, the sky had turned entirely blue-violet, radiating the dragon vein's energy. The devastation it could unleash was unimaginable. Calmly, Kagami extended his hand into the energy stream. Inside the mindscape, Sukuna observed, his expression uncharacteristically intrigued. "This is a truly unparalleled energy source." He chuckled darkly. "Kagami, you can't handle this. Your body isn't built to endure such power." Kagami's lips curled into a faint smile. "Have you ever heard the story of the man who prized the box over the treasure inside? What nonsense are you spouting?" Sukuna demanded. Kagami's Sharingan glinted coldly as he replied. "The moral of that story is about priorities, knowing what to keep and what to discard. In reverse, it's about refining and preserving only what's essential." He gestured to the immense energy flow. "Since I couldn't open the seal alone, I realized something." He glanced at Sukuna, his gaze piercing. "The cage that binds you may be far more valuable than you." Sukuna's expression twisted. "Are you mocking me?" Kagami smirked, but his focus remained on the torrent of energy surging around them. The dragon vein's energy began flowing into the Crimson Gate within Kagami's mindscape. Sukuna's body trembled slightly. The energy coursed through the gate, illuminating the once darkened space beyond. Within the sealed confines, a massive blue-violet dragon coiled among the mountains of bones. Its endless form seemed to stretch on forever, each scale shimmering with a mystic glow. Though the dragon lacked consciousness, its mere presence radiated an overwhelming power that even Sukuna couldn't ignore. Back in the physical world, the ground around the tower began to collapse, and the city of Rorin teetered on the brink of annihilation. For Kagami, however, this was just the beginning. The perfect Mangekyo Sharingan was now within his grasp. Meanwhile, the world beyond Rorin began to stir, as unseen consequences of Kagami's actions rippled across the elemental nations. The city of 1,000 towers began to collapse. This city was built entirely upon the power of the dragon vein. Sasori's eyes widened in disbelief. His understanding of the world turned upside down. Someone had truly managed to harness the dragon vein. There was no elaborate ritual, no visible struggle. The Earth's lifeblood, the dragon vein, was swallowed into the body of that young man as though it were nothing more than a drop of water disappearing into the ocean. For a fleeting moment, Sasori thought he glimpsed a fantastical scene, a celestial dragon coiled above a blood-red sea. Far away in the land of demons, the Shrine Maiden line had long been entrusted with sealing away a malevolent entity known as Morio. Morio's power came from the darkness in human hearts. Inside her palace, the Shrine Maiden Moroku sat meditating. Suddenly, her body trembled violently. A torrent of malevolent intent invaded her mind. Within her consciousness, a spectral demon head roared, "Shrine Maiden. You felt it, didn't you? The Earth's seal has vanished. Haha. You can no longer confine me. Soon I will shatter this seal. This world is mine to destroy. I will obliterate everything and build my 1,000 Kings empire." Grass Village in the infamous Hozuki Castle, a prison built by the Grass Village to detain rogue shinobi, a strange black box lay hidden in secrecy. The box, known as the Box of Ultimate Bliss, bore 4 faces: joy, anger, sorrow, and pleasure. A relic of the Sage of Six Paths era, it was said to be the ultimate weapon capable of granting any wish, fueled by sufficient negative energy. It was rumored that, in ancient times, the Grass Village nearly used it to conquer the entire world. The box now glowed ominously, radiating dark light. Such phenomena began to unfold across the shinobi world. Long-sealed evils and monsters stirred from their slumber, driven by the disturbance of the dragon vein. On the moon a millennium ago, after sealing Kagaya, the brothers Hagoromo and Hamura went their separate ways. Hagoromo stayed on Earth to establish the shinobi world, while Hamura departed with his clansmen to the moon to guard their mother's prison. Within a grand palace on the moon, a pale-skinned, blue-haired middle-aged man held an infant in his arms. His pure white eyes gazed down upon the blue planet below, his brows furrowed. What is happening in the shinobi world? First, the Ghetto statue was summoned years ago. And now, the world created by the Sage of Six Paths grows ever more corrupt. In the realm between life and death, the progenitor of the shinobi world, the Sage of Six Paths, slowly opened his eyes. Those faint purple orbs, the Rinnegan, radiated infinite power. For centuries, he had existed as a chakra-based form, guarding the afterlife and observing the shinobi world. He had remained silent even when UCHIHA Madara awakened the Rinnegan and summoned the Ghetto statue. But now, something equally significant had occurred. The dragon vein, which played a crucial role in stabilizing the earth and sealing countless evils, had been disturbed. Uchiha Kagami. The sage murmured the name softly, his voice carrying a weight of contemplation. He couldn't fathom how this descendant had accomplished such a feat. Should he intervene now, forcing Kagami to return the dragon vein? Yet once again, he hesitated. The prophesied child, the one destined to guide the shinobi world, had not yet appeared. If he interfered too soon, the sage sighed deeply. He chose to trust the prophecy, to trust that the world would one day meet its savior. Back in Roran, the once proud city had been reduced to ruins. Survivors wandered amidst the debris, trembling, crying, and wailing in despair. Ignoring the devastation around him, Kagami Uchiha leapt down from the shattered ceiling platform. The dragon vein's absorption had unleashed chaotic repercussions. In the shadows, unseen forces howled in fury, their wrath stirred by Kagami's actions. He glanced at the fractured earth beneath him, noting with some satisfaction that the tremors had not spread further. Sasori, still reeling from the shock, finally spoke. "Uchiha Kagami. You actually did it." Patting Sasori's shoulder casually, Kagami chuckled. "There's no need to be so surprised. Just standard procedure." He turned his gaze towards Sasori, a glint of interest in his eyes. "Sasori, you're quite interesting. Ever thought about becoming my subordinate?" After a moment of silence, Sasori shook his head. "Your strength and spirit are admirable, but I'm a man driven by vengeance. Until I kill that man, I walk my path alone." "What a pity." Kagami mused, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "I doubt you'll succeed against Hatake Tsukumo, though." He shrugged and let the matter drop. Sasori's allegiance wasn't worth pressing for. "Suit yourself. I'm leaving. Once you've scavenged whatever scraps you want, I suggest you do the same. This place feels like it's about to collapse entirely." Sasori clenched his fists beneath his cloak, his resolve hardening. Not aligning with Kagami was undoubtedly the right decision. The thought of such overwhelming power made his puppet heart falter. Summoning a massive eagle, Kagami soared into the sky, the wind tossing his hair. The dragon vein's energy was vast, but it wasn't ready for immediate use. While the natural energy could be utilized for sage mode, Kagami had other plans. There was no need to rely on those beasts and their teachings. The Sharingan itself will suffice. His crimson eyes gleamed as they pierced the clouds, gazing toward the distant horizon. The third great ninja war was about to reach its peak. Lord Kagami, you've returned. The camp's shinobi greeted him with deference. Over the years of war, Kagami Uchiha had risen to the position of deputy commander of the northern battlefront. It was a temporary wartime role, but his fame had become so great that the higher-ups had no choice but to grant him this title. The forces under his command consisted mostly of notable clans such as the Akimichi, Nara, Yamanaka, and Inazuka. His own clan members had been sent to the eastern battlefront. 6 months ago, Kirigakure officially entered the war, seeking to carve out a piece of Konoha's strength. The 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist had begun to make a name for themselves as a fearsome special unit. Konoha was now fighting on 4 fronts. The northern and western fronts were the most grueling, with the Wagakure and Kumogakure's combined strength posing a significant challenge. Danzo had taken the opportunity to repeatedly lambast Kagami during strategy meetings, accusing him of destabilizing the situation by killing the Eight-Tails Jinchuriki. Fortunately, Kagami never heard those remarks. If he had, Danzo would have been long dead. The old rat had gone into hiding, evading Kagami's reach, like vermin lurking in the shadows. Just as Kagami sat down in his tent, hurried footsteps approached. Lord Kagami, Jiraiya-sama has requested your presence immediately. It's an urgent matter. Kumogakure has attacked? When Kagami lifted the flap of the command tent, a heavy tension filled the air. Inside were Jiraiya, Fugaku Uchiha, Rin Noara, and Kakashi Hatake. Kakashi stood stiffly, lifeless and numb, his expression mirroring the one his father bore years ago. Kagami cast a glance at Fugaku and spoke bluntly. Why are you here? That can wait, Jiraiya interjected grimly. Kagami. Obito has fallen. Kagami's expression didn't shift. He had deduced as much when he didn't see Obito in the tent upon entering. Observing Kakashi closely, Kagami noticed something peculiar. Both of Kakashi's eyes were intact, though his chest was heavily bandaged. It seemed that the exchange of eyes between Kakashi and Obito in the original timeline had been circumstantial, rather than part of Madara's machinations. Had events followed the same path as before, Kagami would have found it odd. He stepped forward, standing directly in front of Kakashi. Kakashi's lifeless eyes slowly lifted to meet his. Kagami. Obito is gone. I know, Kagami replied coldly. And? Kakashi fell silent for a long time before rasping out his words. Where were you? Why didn't Minato-sensei respond to me? I was so close to saving him. Tears streamed down Kakashi's face, soaking his mask and falling to the ground. For days, he had been silent, refusing food or drink. Now, in Kagami's presence, his emotions finally broke free. Smack. The sound of Kagami's slap echoed through the tent as Kakashi collapsed to the ground. Kagami, what are you doing? Jiraiya exclaimed. Ignoring him, Kagami placed his foot on Kakashi's chest, his gaze icy and condescending. You think Minato and I are supposed to revolve around you? You think you deserve to be constantly shielded by others? Always thinking it's someone else's responsibility to save you. If only Kagami were here. If only Minato were here. Why? Kagami leaned down, grabbing Kakashi by the collar and bringing their faces close. You call yourself a shinobi? You abandoned yourself the moment you lost a friend. Pathetic. He pointed outside. This is war. A battle for survival. While I'm standing here talking to you, more Konoha shinobi are probably dying out there. Obito was nothing special. Neither are you. And neither am I. If you want to cry, go do it somewhere else. I don't have time to listen to your whining. With that, Kagami shoved Kakashi backward with his foot, sending him sprawling out of the tent. Rin immediately followed, concerned for her teammate. Kagami, your methods are too harsh, Jiraiya said with a sigh. He didn't condone Kagami's approach, but he didn't stop him either. He couldn't bear to see Kakashi fall into despair, but he also knew Kagami's harshness might just be what was needed. Turning to Jiraiya, Kagami spoke with an air of indifference. You're mistaken. That wasn't a motivational tactic. I just felt like scolding him. After a brief pause, Jiraiya shifted the topic to Fugaku. During your absence, Kumogakure launched several skirmishes. Iwagakure has been relatively quiet, so Fugaku was sent to temporarily fill your role. Kagami raised an eyebrow, a sly smile creeping onto his face. Oh? So I suppose that makes Fugaku the new deputy commander now. Fugaku's stoic expression didn't waver as he replied, "This is Lord Hokage's directive. Mirror, you've been through much these past years. It's time for you to take a well-deserved rest." Kagami's eyes narrowed, his smile widening. "Oh, I'm sure this was all for my benefit." Jiraiya patted Kagami on the shoulder. "Take some time for yourself, Kagami. Even the strongest need to rest. Besides, Minato and Kushina have had their breaks too. You've earned yours." "I'll handle myself just fine, Jiraiya, sensei." Kagami exited the tent, glancing back at Fugaku with a smirk. "Fugaku, come along. There are some things I need to discuss with you." "As do I," Fugaku replied evenly, following him out. Watching the two leave, Jiraiya couldn't shake a sense of foreboding. But this was a matter for the Uchiha. It wasn't his place to interfere. Kagami walked far from the camp, Fugaku silently trailing behind him. At a large tree, Kagami stopped, turning to face Fugaku with a sly grin. "So, you've awakened the Mangekyo but still chose to align with Hiruzen Sarutobi?" Fugaku's eyes sharpened, though he quickly calmed himself. "You noticed. I see. Your eyes are truly formidable." As he spoke, Fugaku activated his Mangekyo Sharingan. The tomo spun into the shape of a three-bladed shuriken. "This cursed power. If I could, I would prevent you from awakening it. I've glimpsed the future, Kagami. If the Uchiha rebel, there will be no victory. We must wait, bide our time until we are strong enough." Kagami crossed his arms, his grin widening mockingly. "Such shallow foresight. Your so-called vision of the future is based on nothing but your limited perspective. The future isn't something you foresee. It's something I create." "Enough talk, Fugaku." Kagami beckoned with a hand. "Come at me with everything you've got. Don't disappoint me by dying too easily."
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.